Welcome back. This is the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. You know what time it is. It's time to break down the offensive film on the all 22 coaches angle, both end zone, both sideline. For those who are new to the podcast, you'll be getting to watch the game with us. Well, if you're listening, you'll be able to listen to the game with us as we go play by play through every drive. For those watching along on YouTube, watch along with us. You can find out, you can make your own observations, but also you can listen to ours, and we'd love the back and forth if you do decide to do either of those. So we're going to dive into this thing. I'll start by saying this, Nick. I always like to talk about, what's something that we learned or what's something that we think different after watching the film, because I do always feel differently about this team and about what I saw on the broadcast angle after watching the film. Specifically, you can talk about like that Slayton play, the drop at the end of the game. On broadcast, I really felt like that was more on the quarterback. It's just how it looked to me. It looked like Slayton was running wide open. It looked like he had to stop and turn around. But if you watch in the all-22 angle, you can see that really was more on the wide receiver, Darius Slayton, not just for dropping the pass. More to me, it's not just the drop. Like everybody say, oh my God, if you get your hands on a football, you have to catch it. I agree with that. I get it. But I mean, this dude is like jumping, high pointing. He has to avoid a hit. That's a little harder than it seems, especially at full speed. For me, the bigger fault there from Slayton, and we'll get into this as we break down the play, is just that he stops his route, rounds it out, and tries to like high point it when he should be running through it. And that's just part of his, deficiencies in his specific game, and that becomes adjusting to routes, adjusting in the air. But there are actual things I learned on tape that I just didn't expect to see. The first one being how the Washington Commanders decided to actually play the Giants. You look at this Giants matchup on paper, if you're the Commanders, and you're like, okay, we got a team that plays a lot of 12 personnel, the Giants. That means 2 tight ends of the field. They play a lot of 13 personnel sometimes with 3 tight ends of the field. Sometimes they bring in a 6th offensive lineman. I mean, they're not running a lot of spread, shotgun, 11 personnel. So let's, counteract that with heavy personnel ourselves. A lot of linebackers on the field, big safeties. That's not what the Washington Commanders did. They played nickel and dime the entire game, 63.1% in nickel, 29.2% in dime, and yet somehow, some way, completely stymied the Giants' run game. If you take away the draw plays, which we'll get to, which are like great runs, but at the same time, like anyone should really be able to run on those boxes, and they were great calls by Kafka too. If you take away those runs, I mean, the Giants average probably less than 1-2 yards per carry. I don't have the math in front of me, but Barkley averaged 3.5 yards per carry with those big runs. So it's amazing to me how they stymied this. We'll talk about Cameron Curl, the Washington football team safety, who Nick loved. And I've seen film of him earlier. He played phenomenal this game. John freaking Bostic, Nick. Like, I just couldn't even believe he was still in the NFL. He played a better game at linebacker for Washington than I've seen from by far and away any of these Giants linebackers in any game this season, even for a quarter. I haven't seen a Giant linebacker for a quarter play the way this dude played. And I'm just thinking like John Bostic, really? So we'll see what all happened there. But the key thing for me that I was surprised about was the personnel that Washington used to match up against the Giants and somehow stuff the run game. And the second thing, which I'll ask you about, is we finally saw a lot of 2 high coverages and a lot of 2 high safeties. There was a lot of quarters coverage, but a lot of 2 high looks from Washington. That's not something we've seen in a long time. Teams have been just, for the most part, using 1 high against, and that's not always. I mean, no defense runs 1 high all game, but they've run a lot of 1 high against the Giants, just middle field close safety, because they're just like, F it. We don't really care. You're not doing anything in the deep or intermediate passing game. Washington played 2 high, and yet the Giants, I'm not sure they countered it the best way, which I want to get to with you later. So I'll save that part, the Kafka questions later, Nick, as we work through the film. But I do want to bring up those 2 things first to you, as how much nickel and dime Washington played, the personnel, and then also, the usage of 2 safeties up top.
One reason why we saw so much nickel and dime is that's just what Jack Del Rio and this defense does. That's what their personnel allows them to do. They don't really run any base. That wasn't specific to the New York Giants, but you just look at the New York Giants, what they employ, a lot of 13 personnel. Maybe they would match with more base. I don't think they ran a base play the entire time. We just saw safeties in the box, and it's incredible because the Giants still struggled to run the football against lighter personnel, against nickel, against dime. Sometimes it's not like they had 8 guys in the box. They would come out with 7, sometimes 6 guys in the box, but that defensive line is so freaking talented, and they put a lot of pressure on that defensive line so they can run these quarters types of coverages. And that's another reason why I think Kafka was a little bit more conservative. Those boxes were favorable, so run the football in those boxes, and they were able to do okay job in certain spurts throughout the game running the football, specifically on those halfback draws, until the one was just absolutely sniffed out. And it was because and as we'll see in the film, the Washington Commanders basically just gave up the A gaps and said, you can run here. And it wasn't even like Saquon Barkley hit that 21-yard run in the A gap. It's just the player who was over the top, Mark Lewinsky, ended up going inside. So there was a huge B gap and Saquon Barkley just hit it. But regardless of the fact, I would hope after the Giants had a padded practice last week and they made a big deal about how they're going to focus on the run game, they would have been able to exploit this matchup in terms of a personnel or in terms of an employment of strategy standpoint, not a personnel standpoint, because we know Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen are very talented, and John Bostic played really well, as we'll see. And I think Cam Curl, yeah, he's a safety, he's a defensive back. I don't care. That guy aligns primarily in the box, and he's excellent in run support, as we'll see throughout this film. So I really wish we had a more established rushing attack. We saw a lot of GH counters. That means the backside guard and the H-back pulling. We'll go over all that. Early in the game, Saquon Barkley had a lot of success running the football, right, Dan? But they couldn't do anything in the second half every time they tried. And they didn't really have a lot of opportunities because they really couldn't do anything offensively in general.
Yeah, and what's interesting most to me is we expected, a lot of people looked at, what happened to the Giants run game over these last, month before this game. And everyone's like, okay, well, maybe we can just kind of tie it all up in a bow, Nick, and subscribe one reason to it. And that reason is, okay, they didn't have Bellinger. Bellinger was such a big impact blocker in the run game. And they didn't have Neal. And a lot of people just said, okay, no Bellinger, no Neal. That's why we can't run the ball anymore. When we get them back, things will be better. Both those guys played. Bellinger missed just a few snaps in this game. He played almost the entire game. Neal played the entire game. And despite having both those guys back, we still saw the issues. They got the best of what they have to offer from a blocking standpoint from their tight ends. This is as good as it will get, Bellinger and Myrick. They don't have, and it was Vannett too at times. Vannett, we'll talk about him when we see the plays on film, but this was I thought it was a very rusty type game for Vannett. I know he hasn't played an NFL game in a while, but I'm looking for tight end upgrades this offseason. If we get to day 3, Nick, I'll have my circle tight ends in our draft thing. I want another tight end. I want more. I'm all in on tight ends these days, dude. Like if we're gonna run this kind of offense, and we'll see what happens if they re-sign Jones, but I think they will continue to kind of build off of this style of offense, especially if they re-sign Barkley. Then it's a lock. But then we need more tight ends. So we'll see what happens there. Neal is the bigger thing. A lot of people subscribe like, oh, Giants run woes to now we have Tyree Phillips versus Neal. Well, you'll see on the film, and I'll get your take on this as well, Nick. Evan Neal wasn't really good at all in the run game. If anything, like you can look at it and really make the debate, like, was he even an improvement at all for the Giants? He had a huge block on the touchdown run with Barkley, but he had some misses and he fell a lot in the run game. There's the time just before halftime where they ran the zone read. DJ kept it. I was hoping Neal would climb to the second level, show some athleticism, make a huge play when it counted. Instead, he let it's a tough block to make. I know he's blocking inside and he has to get outside and climb, but it's like, this is the 7th overall pick. And you can even see after that play, Neal like slams his fists in like disappointment as he watches DJ go down. And so, we'll talk about that, but I didn't feel like those were I think we kind of learned in this game, at least from the film, those guys weren't really the reasons why the Giants run game has struggled over the month.
Evan Neal was, I would say, the same as a run blocker that we've seen all, he has some solid blocks, but he finds the ground and does not play underneath his feet. He plays outside of the frame of which he should be playing in terms of being a player who is balanced. And that's been the issue dating back to Alabama. But the very positive thing about Evan Neal, Dan, is he was pretty damn good in pass protection. Yeah. He looked good out there. He was holding his own against Montez Sweat. It's not like the Giants run a ton of traditional pass sets, but every time he was asked to do a traditional pass set, he looked very comfortable doing so. So that is definitely I would say, improvement from what we saw prior to his injury.
And you know what? We always have said it, and I'll say it again. I would much rather a tackle great in pass pro or better in pass pro than the run game. And this is what I always expected with Neal when I was so excited about us drafting him. I always was like, I see such a high floor for him in pass pro. And I know he struggled at the beginning in pass pro, but if he can continue like this, like you saw in this game, and again, you made a good point. It's a small sample size, not that many true pass sets, but on those, which is all we have to work with, He looked very good. And if he can continue that, well, now I'm getting what I was expecting. A really high floor pass protector at right tackle, maybe even has a bigger ceiling than I think at pass pro. Run game, I never expected him to be that dominant or anything like that, but I would like to see more in the run game. We'll get to that, though. But let's dive into the film here, Nick, and let's start this off with the first drive of the game. This one's a frustrating one because I really felt like the Giants were building on something here. And then they had the fumble on what would have been a first down at midfield. This is a 4-play, 22-yard drive that did end in the Daniel Jones fumble. It starts out here with the play that you just talked about. The Giants like to run a lot in this game, that GH counter. This time it only went for 3 yards. As you'll see on film, it's kind of a lot of what we just talked about, right, Nick? Evan Neal ends up on the ground here, and that makes a big difference in why this play wasn't successful.
It does. And Washington ran so much counter against the Giants, just like every team has been doing against the Giants. And here we see the Giants running GH counter. You see the backside guard, Nick Gates pull, Daniel Bellinger follow. And ideally in this situation where you have a 4-eye technique, you want Evan Neal to block Daron Payne down and wash him down the line of scrimmage, allowing Nick Gates to kick out 96. And then Daniel Bellinger will be that lead blocker to 52. And if you look at Cameron Curl here, he is paying attention to the release of Chris Myrick, basically engaging himself in a block with Chris Myrick, removing himself from the play. If Evan Neal makes this block on 94, on Daron Payne, then Daniel Bellinger doesn't have to do anything to Daron Payne, and he can curl right around the down block and pick up 52, and this would have been a huge hole for Saquon Barkley, who would not have to cut back into 20. It would have been Saquon Barkley against 22 in the alley, but Evan Neal this is his issue. He leans into the contact. Daron Payne gets his hands on him, and look how exposed his chest is in terms of just how far his chest is over his feet. He's leaning so far into contact. Evan Neal slides off, and now Daniel Bellinger has to adjust his block to take on Daron Payne. He does a good job driving Payne away, but in doing so, where is Saquon Barkley going to go? Because you have a bunch of defenders who he shouldn't have to deal with if the blocking was ideal.
Yep, and you nailed it. This could have been a really big play. If he blocks down there and that opens up that hole and Bellinger executes his assignment like we think he can, that could be a huge play. So this was a disappointment. Okay, 2nd and 7 then after that blown play. We got 12 personnel here. You see a great adjustment by Daniel Jones to read this pass protection, breaking down, pick that A gap and run with it. And I'm sorry, the B gap and run with it. And look, one thing I think about when I watch this play on film, Nick, is what you've always told me. You just want these tight ends to lose slowly. And I know it's a tough assignment against Jonathan Allen, 93, but Nick Vannett loses fast on this one, 46. And it kind of works into blowing up the play. You see Andrew Thomas at the end try to help him, but it's at that point too late.
Yeah, it's really difficult for Nick Vannett to try and block Jonathan Allen. This is just an excellent play by Daniel Jones because this is a single back play action. Jones hits his back foot and Jonathan Allen's already coming in on him. And he just adjusts by Daniel Jones, that is rolling to his right. And as he does that, 91's in his face. So at that point, Daniel Jones, who was square to 91 with about 5 yard separation, just turns the Jets on and outruns 2 Washington defenders. And as Nick Gates comes around and just absolutely annihilates Daron Payne, who was attempting to spin off of a block and hit Daniel Jones. Good awareness by Nick Gates and great play by Daniel Jones to pick up a first down here with his legs, 9-yard rush.
A couple things on this. One, this is kind of just quintessential Nick Gates, always looking for work. In this situation, he looks for work, he finds work, and that may be the difference in why this play worked, potentially. I don't know if that player could have came back and made a tackle, but maybe. The other thing is, man, Daniel Jones in open space, we'll see it later on that like 3rd and 4 play where he rolls to his left and then cuts back. He has really good vision, in my opinion, Nick. I don't know if you feel this way too. I always feel like as a runner, there's some plays like this one and then the one we'll get to later, where he just has like insane vision and then lateral agility for the quarterback position. I know coming out of college, coming out of Duke, when he did run his pro day, he ran an insane 3-cone drill, which tests agility. And that was always something that stuck in my mind because I remember watching his film, especially the game against North Carolina, where he had some runs that I was like, damn, dude, like it may not be the fastest straight line runner, though he has reached some crazy top speeds in the NFL, but his elusiveness and his agility in space as a runner is really impressive to me.
His ability to just kind of come square to 91 and then explode off of that outside foot through the crease, and also his ability to read those blocks and see how he has a lot of room is also very impressive, in my opinion, from Daniel Jones. This is a good play to set up a 1st and 10, another rush by Saquon Barkley.
Yes, it's 12 personnel. This next play, 1st and 10. You have a good block by, it looks like Daniel Bellinger, I think, in this one, which was excellent to see early. And then you also have Gates do a great job of reaching the second level, I thought, and kind of displacing the linebacker, I think 52 here. So I really liked what I saw from both Bellinger and Gates on this play.
Yeah, two guards, both Glowinski and Nick Gates, get up to 52 and knock him off the spot. He still kind of gets to the play side, but watch Daniel Bellinger take on this contained defender. Both these tight ends, they chip 96. Bellinger kicks out 34 right there. That's exactly what you want from your tight end. You want him to kick out, and then there's this crease for Saquon Barkley, but Cameron Curl is just in position from a safety. He's not even in the box here. Just comes right down, puts himself into the hole, and makes a nice low tackle on Saquon Barkley. This is something we're going to see a lot in this game. This is another reason why this team can run quarters and have lighter boxes when you have safeties who are this good at picking their angles and coming downhill.
Yeah, you nailed it. They take great angles to the ball. Well, I have one example later that was insane angle. They're always they rotated him down a lot. Like that was something that was part of their game plan. But I do find it impressive to just watch Bellinger come off, chip, that help with that double team, and then just like you said, kick that end defender out. I mean, he's just a physical, excellent technique blocker already as a rookie. I'm really excited about Daniel Bellinger. Watching this tape, I was like, nope, no rust. He's right back on the field, right, contributing the way he did earlier in the season for the Giants.
Yeah, Daniel Bellinger, so excited to have him back. And I think his role will continue to grow. And that's kind of ridiculous because he's already playing most of the snaps, but maybe they'll get him more involved as a pass catcher. And then as a run blocker, he's just hopefully going to continue to grow because he's been excellent for a rookie tight end to be blocking as well as he has been blocking. It's not something you see typically
at all. And then I really like what I see on the 2nd and 5 call because it felt like in this game, we'll see it a bit later. We saw it on this play. The Giants came in with a game plan and they designed more like different kinds of runs for Daniel Jones, designed for the quarterback. This is one example of that. This is quarterback power. We see Josh Allen ran this a bunch with Buffalo, and I saw the Giants ran a quarterback power for a touchdown, I believe a few weeks. That might have been the Texans game. I can't remember now. My memory isn't as good when we're watching this much, but I just like mixing in more design runs, different kinds of design runs for Jones. This is part of what he is. Like this, if he's your quarterback, you have to utilize him as a runner. You can't worry about the injuries. This is part of his game. And so this is a good play call. It's a well-designed. Unfortunately, Daniel Jones fumbles the football though.
I'm wondering if the Giants wanted to do more and more of this quarterback design runs throughout the game, use the zone read with the mesh point, really put the defense into conflict, just like this play. But this fumble may have deterred them from going back to this. That's a reality of the situation that might have kind of eliminated part of the playbook from Mike Kafka. And this is a well-designed play. And you have Daniel Bellinger, who is the H-back to Daniel Jones's side, looping around to pick up this defender. You'll see it better on the sideline view. Pick up 23, the deep defender. Jonathan Allen makes a great play spinning off of Andrew Thomas's block to get his hands on Daniel Jones and force that fumble. And then Evan Neal doesn't do the best job as the backside puller because it's GT quarterback counter, both backside guard and tackle pull. Evan Neal just kind of leans into it and falls down. Not the best looking block right there on the linebacker, number 52. If we watch from the sideline angle, I want to see if that was blocked and executed well. Let's see exactly what
it would have been a massive play if Neal, and if he doesn't spin off Thomas and Payne and Neal executes his block in space with Bellinger looping around, which was a cool concept that you showed. I just know Daniel Jones in space. I think he's going to make this into a huge play. Now that far side corner might be able to catch him, but I don't know, man. This could have been a massive, massive run.
This could have been, and Daniel Jones has a two-way go. He could have went left. He could have went right, and going right's fine. I know it didn't work out, but he wasn't thinking that Jonathan Allen was going to spin off of the down block from Andrew Thomas. And it looks like Mark Lewinsky doesn't get he gets solid contact on that defender, but you could see how the defender right here is kind of shading towards the inside. But I do love how this RPO tag with the bubble, which they rarely ever throw. I don't know if they've thrown it yet this season. That just occupies those two defenders over there. They have to respect the two wide receivers on that side. And now you have Daniel Bellinger's running straight out of safety. Just wish the execution was better from a blocking standpoint and Daniel Jones didn't fumble, but this could have been a huge play.
And if you're watching along or you're listening on your podcast, circle this play. I really, Nick, hope the Giants come back to this one. When you see a play on film like that, where all you need is Evan Neal to execute his block in space, and you may not even, it's not even on Andrew Thomas. Like, it's possible like a defensive lineman worse than Daron Payne or not as savvy as Daron Payne won't have the, like I just said, the savviness to spin off and get into that lane. It's he reads that even well, because I mean, some D linemen might think the run is going to the right side at that point with Saquon Barkley. So it's just a great play by Payne. But I love the
Allen, little, yes, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Josh Allen, not Payne. And I love the little wrinkle that you talked about with Bellinger looping around to pick up that deep safety. I mean, that I'd love to see them run this play again.
Yeah, so would I. Let's see. But that ends the first drive.
Yep. Second drive coming on. Not as good as the first one here. The second drive is a 3 and out, which we unfortunately get a good amount of in the second half. It wasn't the best offensive game here for the Giants. This is a 3 and out with a punt. It starts with a 1st and 10 situation. This is where you're going to get your first glimpse of a guy who played a much better game than you just I could ever expect, Nick. John Bostic, linebacker for the Washington Commanders. I just didn't know he had this in him, dude. Like, I didn't even know. It's just still stunning to me watching how good of a game this guy had on tape when we're just like struggling to find linebackers like crazy. But he plays this run insanely well here. And this is something I've seen a good amount. I feel like, Nick, this is something I pointed out on my notes. I want to get your take on. I just see too much of 64 getting to the second level and then just not locating anyone. And then like he's just kind of like at the end of the play, just like do, and there's just no one. It's just like Glowinski's out there. There's no one located, and he's just kind of a wasted. Like you just can't be. I assume this can't be what their Giants are hoping for, right?
No. I mean, there's not really somebody for him to block at this point. Cameron Curl takes that shallow angle, so Daniel Bellinger can execute that block.
True.
And then John Bostic, who is number 59, takes such a beeline to this halfback toss, and he sifts through traffic. And this is the most impressive thing about Bostic, right? He positions himself well, but watch him just match Saquon Barkley step for step. And then as Saquon Barkley puts his foot in the ground to go back inside, John Bostic uses John Bates' block on the Giants, or not John Bates, Smith Williams' block right there. And he just kind of goes right back inside and removes that inside cut. And you can see how Washington they're all right there to break back to the inside with Saquon Barkley. And then Bostic goes back outside and helps with the tackle. That's a really, really good positioning. But even if Bostic played this horrendously, look at the rest of Washington's defense. They're all in position. You have so many unblocked guys here. They just knew this was coming. This is a boundary run from, 12 personnel, it looks like, and they run a halfback toss to the boundary, and all of these smaller defenders, again, nickel dime packages, right? They're all just here to just harass the crap out of Saquon Barkley. Nowhere for the guy to go.
Teams are just way too ready for the Giants to run the football on 1st and 10 out of these tight formations with heavy personnel. That's something I would hope that Kafka and Dable look at least, especially when you look at the 2nd and 7 play. This is the play I put up on Twitter, man, because this is why I don't love, this is why personally, and we'll get to it a little bit later, Nick, but I would love to see the Giants run a little bit more shotgun moving forward, and a good amount more shotgun, I'll say, because when you're under center here, the Giants don't often run anything but handoff or play action pass. This is what we're seeing here on this 2nd down play, the 2nd 7 sack, is a straight drop back from under center without any play action. And why aren't they running this ever? I really think of like a handful of times. Can you think of more than a handful of times we've even seen them run a pass from under center without play action? It's very rare. And why not? Because this is the type of things you'll see happen when they do. Glowinski destroyed immediately. Sack. Daniel Jones can't even hit his back foot off the drop before the pressure is right there and he has to evade it. That if you can't even hit your back foot as a quarterback, I don't know how as an offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, you can have any confidence calling pass plays from under center without play action, even with play action, quite honestly, if this is the case. And so that's one of the issues for me and why I'd personally like to see a lot more shotgun. We don't have to discuss that part now. If you want to just break down the play, there'll be time for it later.
Yeah, I feel like if we want to look at positives here, Evan Neal gets out of his stance quickly and then just eliminates 95, matches him up the arc. But if you watch 94, Daron Payne double swipe, if you're watching on YouTube, double swipe, you have Mark Lewinsky who has to kick over to this 3 tech. So he's setting outside. And when he goes to punch, just Daron Payne explodes off his outside foot, uses the double swipe, quick rip, which he doesn't even need because Glowinski did not frame the block well at all. And Jones is screwed here. There's nothing Daniel Jones can do in this situation. You just have to eat a 2nd and 7 sack to set up a 3rd and 16. And we can watch the routes too from the New York Giants, who are out here again in 12 personnel. You have 2 receivers outside of the numbers, so it's wide. You have a quick curl to the boundary side, and then to the field side, you just kind of have a deep post from Darius Slayton. And where is Daniel Jones going to go with the football? You have a drag underneath and then a spot route, OTB. Cameron Curl's all over that guy, and the drag would be the first option for Daniel Jones with this type of pressure, but John Bostic just sticks right to Bellinger's hip, and he also has somebody trailing him. It's really nowhere for Jones to go. This is just a crappy way to start the game, and unfortunately, it kind of carried out through most of this offensive performance.
But the positive lining is even on this angle, you can see it's a really nice pass set from Evan Neal. And that's something that I think is, as at least moving forward, as we look at this more long term, something that is good to focus on and good to bring up. I'm glad you brought that up. So we move to this 3rd and 16 play, and you'll see a lot. I feel like I've seen a lot of times, Nick, this season when the Giants get into these 3rd and super longs, they'll just kind of try to call the screen game. And one thing that I've hated about the Giants this season is their inability to get any kind of screen game going. Really at all. There's been a few spurts of it. But one thing I don't love, man, is he calls it here. It doesn't work. It's a tough situation, right? Screen is tough on 3rd and 16. You even see like the defender there with the responsibility for Saquon is not even like a yard or two off the line of scrimmage. He's so ready for any kind of little route with Saquon Barkley. And the rest of the defensive line adjusts when the Giants offensive line releases and there's just nowhere to go. But this was the last screen they called all game, if I'm not, to Barkley, I should say, all game, if I'm not mistaken. Was there one more or no?
To Saquon, I don't
I don't
believe
think
so,
so.
but it's going to be in my notes. And I would love to see Saquon Barkley more involved. And he was involved. He had 5 targets in this game. A lot of them was the fast fours
Or the
and
slide, the
things
PA
like.
slide. Like, I'm looking for other stuff, though.
Yeah, but the screen game, it just, when you're in a 3rd and long situation and you have Saquon Barkley and he's not necessarily staying in protection, you're going to keep an eye on him. And
Right.
this is like a delayed screen where you're just trying to hope that everybody gets really, really deep in their pass depth, which you can kind of see on the film right here. They're pretty deep, but you still have all these guys near the line of scrimmage. Saquon Barkley kind of just runs around, ends up gaining a yard despite running like 30 yards, it seems like, and the Giants are forced to punt.
Yeah, he did actually turn like a 3rd and what was it, like 8 or 9, whatever that one against was at Jacksonville, where there was like basically the same play. They called the screen, it was blown up, and then he reversed field for the first down. So I'm sure he had visions of grandeur of doing that again, but this time it just wasn't happening. Okay, so we move on to this 3rd drive. Giants finally get some offense moving. And I want to say finally, because the first drive they were moving. Before the Jones fumble, they were moving, but they get back on track, I should say, with a 8-play, 45-yard drive that ends in a field goal. I felt like they left a little bit on the bone here. This could have been a touchdown drive, but we'll see it here. It starts off with one of those 6 offensive lineman looks I talk about, and a play that they just love to run, the play action slide. This time to Darius Slayton. That's the player I'd love them to run it to more. He slips a little bit out of his break when he catches the football. Could have been an even bigger play, I felt like, if he didn't slip with his speed, but he's still able to get 8 yards on this.
Yeah, I like these kind of plays. They're simple. It's easy yardage. You just have 13 personnel essentially with big offensive linemen. The 2 tight ends are going to be towards the slide side, and you act like you're running off the play action to the big offensive linemen side. Look at the Washington defense, and at this point they realize, because I'm sure they watched a lot of film of the Giants offense,
Right.
Jones is going to use his athletic ability, and Slayton has a lot of space. And this goes for an 8-yard gain. Darius Slayton kind of stumbles a little bit after catching the football. 8 yards on first down. I mean, I'll take that every single time. It's just these plays, they're not as available as they once were.
Yeah.
Because the Giants have used them so frequently, and the Giants don't really have a lot of other ways to methodically move the football down the field via Daniel Jones's arm. So they rely on a lot of stuff like you're seeing right now. This play action slides. It works, but if you can't threaten them in other ways, they're going to start really, really clamping down on that, especially if your running attack is not working. So this is something that I appreciate, but I really hope the Giants can start developing a more traditional way of moving the football down the field via Jones's arm.
I would agree, because their teams have adjusted to it, like you said, and you even see later in the game when the Giants tried to run this with Slayton to the left side, and it goes for like 2 yards or 3 yards, I think it was, maybe 4, and it wasn't the same, because even in game the Redskins or the Commanders had adjusted. But on the 2nd down play you're running, it's a 2nd and 2 here. It's again that GH counter run, and it's a nice 5-yard run by Barkley. I thought it was a really nice physical fill here by 22, the safety coming down here. This is just like you mentioned earlier. A lot of these, these 3rd level defenders for the Commanders did a really good job in run support, but you still get 5 yards in the first down.
Yeah, Forrest is a good player. You can see Gates is going to pull Daniel Bellinger. This is better blocked up. You can see here the 3 technique. Evan Neal, they get the combo on him. Bostic, or is that, Davis fills really quickly. Bellinger takes him, kick out on 96, and then Barkley does a really good job getting skinny and just trying to get as much yardage. 22 is right down there in the alley to make that tackle. 22 is a good player. That's Forrest is his name.
Yep. And so it sets up the first down. This one, the Giants come back with 13 personnel. They're in the single back look this time. You'll see a great play by one of Nick's guys, Curl on the Commanders. Not Nick's guys, but one guy who he's, done a great job of explaining how well he played in this game. They are so ready for this play. I felt like, one thing I was going to ask you about, Nick, watching this play that you could help me with is I'm not really certain what Myrick's assignment is here, because you'll see at the end, I'm just wondering why he doesn't block down that man on the end line of scrimmage there, for Washington. If not, whose responsibility is that? And because that could just blow up a play.
This is GH counter again, and Curl's just in the box. He doesn't do anything. He's on the backside of this play. He just gets picked up by Nick Vanette, but he doesn't block these guys down because you're looking to kick out 96 and 52. You're probably going to have these two blockers, I guess, come in and locate them is what I imagine.
It's the puller's responsibility.
Yeah, I believe so, because Myrick just lets 52. And I think 52 is supposed to be blocked by Nick Gates, but 96, he anticipates this. He slants right off the ass of Evan Neal, and he kind of messes everything up by taking on two blockers. You see that? Yep. So instead of having the two pullers, 96 stays so tight to Evan Neal that he takes on the first puller, Nick Gates, and then Daniel Bellinger just ends up running into both of them because he
too much traffic.
Yeah, he keeps everything so damn tight.
It's a great play by 96 then.
It's a great
play. It just looks like this dude is just on the end of the line of scrimmage 52. No one's blocking him, and it's just impossible it's a dead play from the start, but it makes sense. You're hoping that you can have the Giants pullers get around, but great play by 96 to cause that traffic.
Yes. And I mean, this is just another counter run. I mean, the Giants try to do this quite often, and I'm sure as the Giants defense did, they really caught on to what Washington was doing. And if you watch, the counter run really ate the Giants defense up. We'll talk about this on the defensive pod, but then in the second half and towards the end of the game, there was really nowhere for Washington to go. And unfortunately, there wasn't really many huge counter runs from the Giants in this entire game.
True. 2nd and 8, this one sets up here. They try to run the Giants on the 2nd and 8, their classic go-to play, the play action slide. It's covered really well. They're looking for James, and you just see a super athletic play by Daniel Jones. It's a 21-yard rushing gain here. He just realizes the cutback lane and then hits it, and look at that acceleration. This is some of the best acceleration I've seen from Jones as a runner this entire season. The last one that I remember, I think, was against the Jags, where he tried to hit the right sideline and almost cut it back for a touchdown, but was tripped up by his legs. But to have it, as you're watching from this view, the sideline view, a quarterback with that kind of acceleration is pretty damn rare, man. I know there's more running quarterbacks in the NFL now, but even some of them can't accelerate like this. Look at the amount of ground he covers there. They have two defenders trying to close the angle on him or close the gap that he's running through, and they can't. He gets through both of those Washington defenders who kind of flow back to try to stop this cutback run. So it's a really good play by Daniel here. Looking at the sideline angle, Nick, do you think at all maybe the throw could be made to Hodgins here? Right off the play action, hit your back foot and hit Hodgins there coming across. You'll see him right around that NFL logo.
I'd rather him just use his legs at this point, because
before this point.
I mean, even at this point, you could see that Washington is over pursuing Darius Slayton. It is on that slide. And they saw this play earlier in the game. They know that this is something the Giants love to use. They see Darius Slayton coming underneath. So everybody over pursues. You can see the linebacker and then that other safety who is matching Darius Slayton. They both over pursue, and then just look at that lane open up. There's no Washington defender anywhere. So if you look at Hodgins, you still have two safeties. One of them's over top. The other one's driving downhill. You have some defenders underneath. I mean, yes, you could make that throw, but I appreciate the fact that Jones just said, screw it, I'm going to keep it. Outruns both of those Washington pursuing defenders and picks up a huge chunks of yards there, 21 yards.
Yeah, gain at least 10 more yards gained from actually making the decision there to run the football. So you'll see throughout the game there are some examples of Jones just using his legs and doing an accident. It doesn't even matter sometimes when he's in open field. He's bigger weapon than they have basically on the outside at times.
Absolutely. And yeah. Like I said, man, with Daniel Jones, that's one of his best traits right there, is his ability to, if he doesn't love anything downfield, just abandon and run and use his legs. And he is a freaking phenomenal athlete, as we've laid out basically the last 3 years. And that's a 21-yard gain. That's an explosive play. That's something that the Giants don't get many of.
And I want to hammer this home because it's something we talked about earlier this season, but it's really important. Across the NFL this season, on what that play right there is considered a quote unquote scramble. When a quarterback decides, and it's not a design run, a quarterback just decides to run the ball off a design pass. It's considered a scramble. And on all scramble plays this season, now this stat is from week 9, but I'm sure it hasn't changed much. This is according to Ben Solak, and he had done a whole article on it. On all of those quote unquote scrambles where a quarterback decides to run the ball, the EPA, the average EPA on those plays is 0.505. The NFL, the best offense EPA, which is the Chiefs, have a 0.535. So it's literally as good. And the average EPA for any pass play in general, Nick, is 0.232. So it's more than double the average EPA. Expected points added is what EPA is for a quarterback scramble versus a general pass play for any team in the NFL. So that is why we like so much when Daniel Jones decides to run. It's one of the biggest reasons why his EPA was so high during that like torrid 4-game stretch he has. And still, I think he's like top 12, top 13, maybe top 15 now in overall EPA, because he's done a great job adding expected points with his legs on scramble plays. And that was one example of that. We get to a 1st and 10 after that.
It's also a way to just make the defense pay for not being gap sound, even on a play action rollout, because they obviously have to respect the play action portion, right? Like you see the linebackers, they react to Saquon Barkley, and then they're like, oh, Jones is rolling this way. I can, cheat towards that to try to cut down the angle on Darius Slayton, but nobody is in the middle of the field. So when you can make the defense pay in this way, it's not even just off the play action bootleg to the bootleg side, it's to the backside, then you're going to really get into their head to be like, hey, I got to watch out for this guy. And that's exactly what Jones did early in this game.
Yep. You nailed it. So we set up a 1st and 10 after that run. We finally get what Nick and I have been asking for a little more of from the Giants offense. That means 21 personnel. 21 is 2 running backs as the personnel. And out of this, they run that fast 3 to, something we've seen. And I thought this was a good adjustment pre-snap by the Giants, because they get a blitz from the side that they eventually throw the ball to Saquon Barkley. That's what you want to do. You want to throw hot when a defense is blitzing off of that side. It's just like, and this is kind of a tough spot for me, Nick, because it's like you watch this play pre-snap and where they decide to go with the ball. It's like, this is perfect by the Giants. They adjusted perfectly this, but the play only ends up going for 2 yards. It's like, that's how well Washington reacted to all this underneath stuff, and really just in general, how well and how disciplined their defense played from a technical standpoint. I was really surprised at how well this defense played. I'll be honest with you. I know Anthony Armstrong, who we had on to preview the game, said they've been playing better lately, but man, this is one of the most undisciplined defenses I ever saw earlier this season. And they've done just like a complete 180.
And it's a post wheel route to Saquon Barkley's side. The ball's in the middle of the field. Barkley and Breida are in split back. Right before the snap, Barkley goes fast 3. The blitz comes. Daniel Bellinger runs the wheel. Darius Slayton runs the deep post. It's a too high look from Washington, and Jones is just reading number 34 and that safety and seeing what exactly they're doing. 34 syncs with Bellinger, throws it to Barkley, and then Barkley kind of takes a second to recoup himself before running. And you're right, catches the ball a couple of yards behind the line of scrimmage, only gets 2 yards. I wish this was a little bit more, because it seemed like the stars were aligning for the Giants on this play.
Yeah, exactly. And then again, it is one more, and that is fine, because this is where it should go, especially when that DB blitzes. But it is one more example. The Giants running post wheel every single week. Here's another one. And the post and the wheel has not been thrown yet. One day, Nick, I want one time this season. I don't even care how it's covered. I hope it's covered to a point where you should make that decision. But I just want to try a post or a wheel at some point, dude, because you can get a big play off of those. This is a good decision by Jones. Let me make that clear. You want the ball to go to Barkley. This is exactly as designed. It's weird that this didn't go for more. That sucks. Washington played it well, but at some point, Nick, I am hoping to see a post or wheel. Just file that one away.
Yeah, he didn't necessarily have the time to hit the Darius Slayton wheel off the split, because you have those 2 defenders coming off the edge, even though Gates gets out to pick up the other, Breida gets out to pick up the other. But if you look at Darius Slayton, like right here, that safety is going to latch onto him. The ball's already released to Saquon Barkley. So just get rid of the football, try to get what you can, and it just didn't work out on this specific play.
Yeah, 100% the right decision. I'm speaking in general terms there with the post and the wheel. 2nd and 8 situation here. Quarters look from the Washington football team. Before we do the play, Nick, I know a lot of people have discussed they love our content, but they want us to do a little bit more of a breakdown. I know some of it you'll probably feel like, Nick, I've explained this before, but it's always good to re-explain for a lot of reasons. 1, we have new listeners. 2, sometimes, it's hard to, even for me, especially for me, I should say, it's hard to always comprehend. I like hearing things, multiple times to have them like cemented in. So just explain to the listeners what we mean when we say a quarters look from the defense pre-snap.
Quarters is essentially a coverage where 4 defenders are going to take the deep quarters of the field. So you're going to have 1/4 by the cornerback, 1/4 by the safety, 1/4 by the safety, 1/4 by the other cornerback. So you're protecting theoretically against explosive plays. There are so many different varieties of quarters type of coverages. There's a lot of match principles within said coverages. But when we're referring to quarters here, we're just basically referring to the fact that they're going to have the 4 guys deep, and it's probably a match type of principle. If we say cover 4, that's more of a spot drop type of principle, where you're just dropping to a zone. A lot of teams around the NFL are running quarters, though. And like I said, there are so many different types of variations of quarters. Here is a quarters type of coverage on 2nd and 8, where the Giants run an RPO, which is good, because you can see in quarters, if you're watching on YouTube, look how far off these guys who are presumably taking the deep
Yes.
forwards are. Like, there's a lot of space, and this is a coverage that, like I said, is proliferating around the NFL, and a lot of teams are running it against the Giants when they do want to go in too high. So what have the Giants done to combat that over the last, I don't know, like 5 or 6 weeks when they aren't facing middle of the field closed, because quarters is the middle of the field open type of coverage? They just take what's there. They go with those quick hitches, those little flat routes, and things around the line of scrimmage. And I saw that on the timeline. A lot of people talking about how the Giants aren't pushing the ball vertically and why they're throwing a lot of passes around the line of scrimmage. One reason for that, and I'm sure there are plenty of reasons for that, which is something that we discuss a lot on this podcast, but one reason for that is because the Giants are, or the Giants are facing coverage that is not press. They're not really facing a ton of press coverage. There's a lot of off leverage against them. So you can throw these quick passes and allow your playmakers to make plays. Unfortunately, not a lot of these Giants wide receivers are really making a lot of plays when the football is getting into their hands.
Yep, that's a great breakdown. Thank you for that, Nick. And we'll see the play now run out here. This ends up a 3-yard gain. This is up a 3rd and 5 here. Good call by the Giants. I just feel like the once again, another example of this Commanders defense with playing pretty technically sound and reading the play well.
Yeah, see, I wish this was more of an RPO element, but it looked like this was just a zone read type play. But with Daniel Bellinger going into the flat, like, I thought maybe this was going
throw it. Yep.
Yeah, maybe throw it to Daniel Bellinger here, but he looks like he's just going to block. And Daniel Jones is reading that end man on the line of scrimmage. We can see it a little bit better from the end zone angle.
They replace him.
They replace him, and this is something a lot of teams have done.
Much of this lately, it's killing us.
It is, because Jones is reading this correctly, but Washington has an adjustment built into their defense whenever they think it's going to be a zone read and there is a mesh point. They're going to use that read defender and they're going to crash him down the line of scrimmage. And you can see this right here on the right side of the screen. Crash him down the line of scrimmage, and then 52 is just going to replace. So when Jones keeps it, 52 is right in the face of Daniel Jones. And there's really nowhere for Jones to go, even though he has these lead blockers. He actually does a solid job avoiding 52, and then he only ends up picking up 3 yards on the play to set up a 3rd and 5.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Giants here, Nick, and this is a general thought, but if you're continuing to see on tape teams make that adjustment, which is, crash that end man down, which kind of, signifies to Jones, okay, I should keep it, but then replace him with a linebacker, you've got to start building in more throws into these RPO, like different kinds of throws, different kind of route combinations. I don't know, but you got to, if they're going to make that adjustment, they're taking another player off the, out of their defense to stop Daniel Jones. And to stop the run. That's 2 players committing heavily. I don't know. I just feel like there's got to be something else some kind of adjustment here from the Giants.
It could have just been a really good play by 52 as well, because Evan Neal, he's stepping towards the play side of Matt Breida, because typically a lot of teams flow towards that side unless you're the read defender. So you can see Evan Neal kind of step inside, and then 52 just goes outside to replace. And then Neal's like, oh, crap. And now you have 2 Giants blockers on 2 Washington defenders. Neither of them really gets a clean shot on the defenders. You could say Isaiah Hodgins does an okay job on Bostic there, but 52 is the issue. And maybe someone would say Neal could have done a better job matching 52 in this situation to not allow him to replace, because he did step a little bit too inside. But I think it's just kind of a really good play by Jamin Davis.
Sure. And then that's going to happen sometimes. Sometimes they're just going to make great plays and it's going to blow things up. But it sets up a 3rd and 5 situation. Here you'll see the Giants go to one of their favorite, 3rd and short, 3rd and manageable beaters here that has worked for them at times this season, which is that, PA slide route. Try to hit, I think it was Richie James on this one on the slide route. But you'll see here, if you're watching and if you're listening, you can just hear it. You can hear it. Washington is so damn ready for this dude. The linebackers do not bite at all on the play action. They're just ready for some kind of route to come back across the line of scrimmage, and the Giants try to catch you by surprise. But when all those defenders are sitting right around the line of scrimmage, it makes it really difficult here for, the Giants to actually execute this play. And it goes for, I think, a 1-yard loss.
It's a reduced bunch. Richie James is the tightest receiver, so the number 3 receiver. He motions to a 2-by-2 set, and then at the snap, Daniel Jones goes into the mesh point with Matt Breida, and James comes right underneath the mesh point, and Washington is all over it. And you can also look at the coverage. This is a 3rd and 5 situation, and Washington comes out in a Tampa 2 robber look. And this is something that they did throughout the game. And if we remember, actually, going back to the 2020 season, Alex Smith, I believe it was intercepted by Logan Ryan to end a game against Washington on this type of coverage. And obviously that has nothing to do with the fact that they ran this coverage here, just an indication as to how it may look like middle of the field closed. And then you have the 2 you could see if you're watching on YouTube, you have those two cornerbacks kind of bail to the deep half, and then that safety, who looked like it was middle of the field closed, drops into a robber roll to take basically a Tampa 2 type of look, only it's not the middle linebacker dropping, it's the safety. And if Jones saw that crossing route, didn't anticipate this defender in the middle of the field to drop, then he could have thrown it right to that defender. It would have been an interception. That wasn't the design of this play for the Giants offense, but just a little note on different types of defenses and defenses that we saw throughout this game, because as we said earlier, there's a lot more middle of the field open in this game than we've seen probably from most teams who play the Giants this year.
You nailed it, and I love that breakdown because I think it's a pretty unique coverage, that Tampa 2 look. It's tricky. Like I personally think it's a coverage you should only use sparingly for the most part. I'm curious to get your take on that, just general NFL terms. I feel like it's super risky, and I've seen so many teams get burned trying to run that coverage. But it is cool because it does kind of trick the offense in some ways. You get a look pre-snap, right? You get the look pre-snap is like, oh, I get one look from these two safeties, and then boom, that immediate rotation by the safeties post-snap gives you an entirely different look. And so that could trick an offense into calling a play they think would work against the first look, and they don't get that look. So it's a very interesting coverage. I like the creativity of it, but I just feel like at times I've watched some film breakdowns by people, and they're like, look at this team trying to run this Tampa 2, and they just get destroyed by it.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult coverage, and it's a coverage that has so many vulnerabilities in it. And if you anticipate a team running that coverage, you can really attack those deep halves, because those deep halves are bailing, because initially they don't look like they're in deep halves. Right. So they're basically in bail mode. So if you want to run a 7 route against that, you can get a lot of leverage to the outside. So you do not want to run it too much. But if you anticipate crossing routes, and if you think the quarterback isn't going to believe that that safety is going to sink down, then there could come away with a turnover or an easy batted pass, something like that. So I would agree with that assessment. But the Giants get a field goal out of this, at least.
They do get a field goal. So they did get something out of this. And that leads us to their 4th drive of the game, by far and away, in my mind, their best offensive possession, not just because it was the longest and it did end in a touchdown. I just felt like I liked how the offense was moving on this one. It's a 5-play, 81-yard touchdown drive. And it starts here with the best play of the game by the Giants offense, a 55-yard shot play to Darius Slayton. And man, one thing I love most about this play, you can see it from that angle, where Jones launches the ball and where it lands. This bad boy travels 55 yards in the air on a rope. That is a difficult throw to make. That's arm talent, right? People are like, oh, does Jones have arm talent? I actually feel like, Nick, and this is just a general thought, but it's something that stuck out to me all season long, especially now that we're in December and it's colder. This game I wasn't there, Nick, but my brother told me it was a very cold game. It was a very windy game. I think just through off-season training his lower half, things of that nature, Jones's arm strength has improved since from the film I saw from 2019. Remember that Eagle game and that Packer game from his first season where he was just short. Some of those deep balls were just hanging, fluttering, falling short. They were really bad. You don't see that ever at all anymore, I think, from Jones. I haven't seen one deep ball this year where I felt like the arm strength was an issue. In a lot of ways, I feel like the arm strength has been a strength on these deep balls. This 55 yards in the air here on a line, that's a good freaking throw from Daniel Jones. So I wanted to point that out. But the thing I love the most about this play is something I've heard Greg Cassell talk about when he breaks down Daniel Jones film, something he likes. Off of these play action deep drops, and I know the Giants don't run them a lot because the offensive line sucks so bad and they can't trust the O-line to run them. And even on this play, there is pressure. He's getting hit when he makes the throw. I love how fast Daniel Jones snaps his head back around off these play action deep drops. It's that's what Cassell talked about, something he loves. You want these quarterbacks to be able to do that. It saves them the time they need. And there you can see from that end zone angle, that's a great ball.
It's a fantastic play overall and pass from Daniel Jones. And let's watch the stripe of the helmet from the end zone angle. This is a cover 3 look, middle of the field closed. Pre-snap, it is a quarters look, but the Washington football team, they send Cameron Curl on the blitz. And you can see on the end zone angle from the quarters look pre-snap, this defender, this safety is dropping from his deep 4th and matching 46, Chris Myrick. And you can see how he flows out with Chris Myrick. So now Jones has to go into the play action. He hits his back foot and he sees it's middle of the field close. He sees it's not quarters, knowing he has that one-on-one matchup. So he just holds that safety in the middle of the field, holds him till he hits that back foot under pressure and then fires the football. Excellent freaking play by Daniel Jones, and also a great adjustment from Darius Slayton, who is under some scrutiny right now. We'll get into that play a little bit later, but this ball is to the inside and there's some good coverage here from this defender.
Right.
This defender is right on top. He's in better position than Darius Slayton, but Darius Slayton works himself back inside. A lot of people are like, oh, that's a push. I don't really see much of a push here, maybe a little bit there, but I just feel like this cornerback has very positive body position. He's trying to ride Darius Slayton towards that sideline. Darius Slayton just kind of uses his momentum against him to get right inside. And that's what it looks like to me. Like if this was called DPI, I would have been pretty pissed.
Oh,
or
yeah.
OPI, I would have been pretty pissed, right? Like there's might be a little bit of contact, but to me, that's just a wide receiver taking advantage of a cornerback who was relying on his initial good positioning.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. I also wish that, after the big drop play that Slayton had late in the game, the key that could have won the game, they went back to him on a deep ball. There was less space for him, but the ball placement, by the way, on that play, as we'll see later, was even better, I thought. I mean, that was one of the best I thought it was the best ball Jones threw all day, even though it landed incomplete. I would have loved on that play to see Darius Slayton do the same thing, make an adjustment to it, but on that play, he actually let the corner kind of ride him out of bounds. And a lot of people are like, oh, that was DPI. Me and you didn't, when we watched the play together, we didn't think that was DPI. We just thought Slayton could have done this exactly, like a better job of what you see here. Like, don't let the corner ride you off your spot, like make an adjustment in the air. And so this was a good example of him doing that. Later, you see an example of him not doing that. Also on the play he missed just before that, I didn't think the adjustment was great. So that's one area of Slayton's game that I think will probably always be missing, the ability to adjust in the air. This is a good example of it. It's not like he can't do it. Clearly, you see here he can, but it's something he can definitely do a better job of at times.
A good route by Slayton, too, who's outside the numbers. He angles his stem inward, not towards the bottom of the numbers exactly, and then he explodes back outward. And you can see this cornerback's in a good quarter turn, just stays on top of it, just really well executed by the cornerback until Darius Slayton is able to work back inside. Is there a little bit of contact there? Yeah, probably a little bit, but I don't think this is a OPI like we said before.
And receivers do this to Giants DBs all day. Like, this is just the NFL. The NFL allows receivers to get a lot more leeway than D-backs. It is not a fair shake for the DBs. I know you agree with me on that.
Yeah, it is. And this is a 12 personnel explosive play from the Giants, from under center, single back, play action. So you like the fact that they're able to do this. And this is something that Slayton has come through for the Giants a lot in recent weeks on these big explosive plays, at least once or twice a week. It could have been a lot bigger if they connected later in the game in that 2-minute drill, but still a really, really impressive play.
Sets up a 1st and 10 here. Earlier in the season, I liked after those kind of explosive plays, Kafka wouldn't do the classic, like, I don't want to call it Jason Garrett because I think a lot of coaches do it, which is just run the ball after an explosive play. Like, oh no, we got to get our whole line down the field. We're running out of play clock. Just get into something. Let's call a run call. I just hate the run after an explosive play, man. I'll take any other call than a run, to be completely honest, unless you're the 49ers or like some like classic great run team. If you're not a great run team, the Giants are not a good running team right now. For whatever reason, like literally they couldn't run the ball against nickel and dime in this game. I just don't love the call here. And so you can see Washington is just the weak side blocking here is terrible. There's penetration early. There's literally nowhere to go. And it's a 3-yard loss. Glowinski's terrible on this play. I thought I had that in my notes. 64 just gets destroyed off the snap. And this was the second play of the game where I thought 64 Glowinski had just a horrific rep, to be completely honest. We saw the sack earlier. So I don't know, man. I just don't love this call at all to run after that big play.
Yeah, it's 12 personnel, double Y, and they run to the weak side, and they lose 3 yards because the blocking to the weak side is, like you said, terrible. Now, Jack Del Rio runs a lot of over type of fronts, 4 down fronts. Over means you're going to have the 3 technique to the strength. Here, it's a 4-eye with the double Y. So you have the 4-eye technique, Jonathan Allen, the inside part of Andrew Thomas. But this is a weak side run. So typically, that's a 1 technique. Now it's a 2 technique, but still, it's a clear or a 2-eye technique. So that means on the inside shoulder of Mark Lewinsky, who is that play side guard. Glowinski has a clear block down opportunity on Daron Payne, but Daron Payne catches his arm and just removes him. And then if you look at Evan Neal gets caught leaning outside, and number 90, Montez Sweat, just sheds him easily and then shoots inside. A lot of slanting, kind of like a slant inside. Let me just undercut that. Then he intercepts John Feliciano, and by that time, there's just nowhere for Saquon Barkley to go. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see. And then these are kind of the issues with this offensive line. It's slanting up front. It's just losing one-on-one matchups. It's splitting double teams, which we didn't really see here. But if you remember from the beginning of the year, Dan, we talked so much about how backside blocks were just the offensive line was playing complementary football in the sense that on the front side and backside of plays, those blocks were executed. I don't remember the last time we've said that after a game, though, consistent level. It's been so long.
Damn, you're right. It sucks to hear it like that, but you're right. That is part of the issue here. And a lot of that I think is, and I'm curious to get your take, is just so many, when you mix and match, and you're shuffling in so many different players on the interior offensive line, and you're shuffling in a new right tackle, then you got to go to Parrott for a game, got to take out Bellinger, you got to bring in Cager. You're like, there's just so many moving parts, I think, that make it harder. Continuity is a big factor, but you're right. And so you'll see here the second down play call here. The Giants run a play that they've run a lot here. I feel like it's kind of just a play action counter. So one thing I do like about this play call, Nick, is that there's a few things I like about this play here on 2nd 13. The first is they're running counter a lot in this game. I love setting up one play, which is the play action off counter, what you'll see here, after showing the same exact play, but running the counter, which they've already done in this game. That's just something I like from every coordinator. Kafka, I think, does a good job of that. One aspect of his game. The other thing I really love about this play, dude, is watch Hodgins here, number 18, who comes in motion. Look at that tempoing of his route. He really does the full sell here, like he is not involved as a receiver. He's like, this is a run play. I don't have anyone to block. I'm just done. I'm not in this play. Then boom, explodes out of that break to the out. And it's only a 6-yard gain, but it does set up a 3rd and possible.
It does, and that's an excellent observation. Watch Hodgins comes in motion to the tight with the 2 tight ends there because this is 12 personnel. You can see just, I'm just chilling. 29 backs off of him, and then easy pitch and catch, and you pick up solid yardage here. What is this? A 6-yard gain to set up a 3rd and 7 for the Giants. And one thing that I wanted to just point out, the Giants run this play action counter a decent amount, get Jones rolling to the other side.
Yeah.
The telltale sign that it's going to be play action a lot of the times is the H-back doesn't come across. On counter, he's pulling the backside guard, Mike Kafka. You see Nick Gates running like right there to kick out like he would typically, but the Giants rarely ever just run one puller. Like they're a big 2-puller type of team. And counter, they usually do the GH, which is the backside guard, and that H-back. H-back blocks here and then releases into a route, right? So that's one, I think, thing that is going to be picked up on by opposing offense or defensive coordinators.
I was just about to say, shh, be quiet, Nick. Don't keep that one under wraps, baby. But I'm kidding. Obviously, the defense coordinators are watching all the film. So, like you said, that will be picked up by a coordinator. Hopefully, maybe they can make an adjustment there. And maybe, you always hope like that it's like a 2-man thinking game. It's like poker, like there's levels to it. He thinks I think I'm bluffing, so he might be like that type of thing. So hopefully they can figure out a way to kind of take that
podcast never goes by without Dan making some kind of poker reference.
Yes. But we have a 3rd and 7 play here. And like I said, that Hodgins play gave him a chance to extend this drive, and that's exactly what the Giants do. You see terrible camera work here on the sideline angle, but what really happened on this play, don't follow the camera, is play action, counter run, play action rollout play. Washington played it with three-man match, cover 3 match, and Jones just makes a great decision here. We've seen on some of these plays, Jones is really patient as he rolls. You can see that here. He's kind of tempoing his rollout, like he's tempoing his speed on the rollout, I should say. Nothing is open. Earlier in the season, we've seen the crossers come open. And so what does he do? He makes the best decision here. He runs with the ball and picks up 10 with his legs to extend this drive.
Keeps his eyes downfield. He sees all the defenders. I mean, this is just another athletic play by Daniel Jones, and he makes these basically every week at this point. Daniel Bellinger, good job getting motioned inside to just chip Montez Sweat, and he makes this key block. It's not like he's dominating Sweat, but Sweat's going inside, and if Daniel Bellinger doesn't contact him here, Sweat's probably going to sack Daniel Jones and effectively end this drive, but instead Jones uses his legs, picks up 10 yards and a 1st down.
Exactly right. And so that, you can look at that play as a really good play from Daniel Jones. I'll say this, Nick, and we don't have to get into this right now. We'll talk about this at the very end, but I thought versus what my original takeaway was watching the broadcast first of all, how I feel now. I thought Daniel Jones had a really good game on film. I know it's weird to say in a game that there's not that many passing yards, there's not that many passing plays, and that many true pass sets. When you factor in everything he adds from an expected points added standpoint with the runs, with those scrambles, and when you factor in like that 55-yarder to Slayton, the Slayton drop, the other ball to Slayton that I really liked right after it, where he just kind of got ridden out of bounds, but the ball placement where that ball fell was really nice. I just thought he had a really good game. This was probably my favorite game on film from Jones in a long time. I'm curious to get your take on like where you rank it maybe versus some recent games, but he had that sick 4-game stretch that I loved of him on tape earlier this season, just before that Seattle game. And then I felt like since that Seattle game, this is actually my favorite game from him on tape.
I think that's not a terrible take. I mean, he was really efficient in this game. Like most of his incomplete passes were spiked footballs.
Yeah.
Like again, the team's not asking him to do too much in terms of passing downfield, but when he had opportunities, he threw some damn good footballs
Yeah.
that were catchable, and not a lot of them were caught. The 55-yard one was. And what happened? The Giants actually scored on that drive. So Jones is putting the team in position for success. Like, look, Daniel Jones is not the issue with this football team in terms of why they're losing right now. Could the Giants upgrade a quarterback? Absolutely. I don't think that's a controversial take, but Jones is still putting this team in a position to succeed, despite the fact that the offensive line is highly questionable, specifically on the interior parts and pass protection. And their secondary is very, very young. And some of those guys stepped up and they played relatively well over the last couple of games.
Right.
But Jones isn't the reason why this team is losing football games right now.
Not at all. And
Tying
again, I did really, what'd you say?
or tying them in this case.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say they're not losing. They tied. It just really does feel like this one, more than any other tie, will feel like a loss to any of us who follow this team or cover this team, because it's not like they came back to tie it, the Giants, right? It wasn't like we were down the whole game and we tied it. They had the ball 1st and 10. They ran a 15-yard play and they ran a first down and they got the stupid taunting play by their guy. We didn't have the comeback. We blew the game. That's why it feels like a loss to me and to you, but it is what it is. We're past it. We have to move past it. So the next play is the final play of this drive. It's the touchdown run to Saquon Barkley here. You're going to see a few things on this play. The one thing I think you're going to see that really looks good is the blocking on the front side of the play from the right side. Mark Lewinsky, who we've been, beaten down, but this was by far and away his best rep of the entire game. Evan Neal to clear that lane. But as Nick and I discussed off pod, and you can kind of probably, explain this a little better, this play is made in large part because the nose tackle here does a pretty poor job trying to go around and beat Nick Gates to his left. He should watch as this offensive line flows to the right, get into that unaccounted gap and take it away. By trying to make the play to Gates' left and come around him, he vacates a gap that doesn't need to be vacated. Like, why open as a run defense? You want to be very disciplined in your run gaps. This was an undisciplined play, I thought, by the nose tackle as far as his run gap. What his run responsibility is.
Yeah, so it's an odd front. So he's the nose, and he chose to go to his right to try to undercut Nick Gates. And if you look right here, you have two guys who are now occupying that gap with the end man on the line of scrimmage outside of Andrew Thomas. Jamin Davis falls for the eye candy of Isaiah Hodgins, and he goes with Isaiah Hodgins here. And you can argue that Jamin Davis has that run responsibility, and that could be a coaching point, because I know there are teams, and I know James Betcher used to do this with Alec Ogletree, where whenever somebody would come across a formation, if it was a play action slide type of team, which the Giants are, then that linebacker would follow that guy, especially when you have an odd front defense that can, 1.5 gap or 2 gap. But Ridgeway tries to penetrate here, and by penetrating, he just eliminates himself from the play. And you have a really just clean block by Mark Lewinsky against Deron Payne. He gets a little bit of help from Feliciano here. So I think Ridgeway just removed himself. Davis, I'm not sure if Del Rio tells him, hey, you're going to match Hodgins if he comes across the formation, or whoever it is, or if Davis is just undisciplined as hell and just decided to abandon the possible run responsibility in this situation. But either way, the Ridgeway not flowing outside with Gates and allowing Gates to swivel his hips to the play side was a pretty damning mistake that led to this touchdown.
Yep, and great news for us, because we haven't had too many damning mistakes by the defense, right? In the run game, in the Giants run game, we haven't benefited from a lot of that in this game at all. This is like one of the only play. I mean, you could talk about the draw plays, but it felt like the Commanders didn't even really it's not the same as it looks in this one. So either way, good for the Giants. Nice cutback by Barkley, nice acceleration into an open hole, and a touchdown for the Giants. Their best drive of the game by far. And so that flips us to another drive, which I actually thought was their second best drive of the game. And we'll get to it at the end. But I want to get your take on it, because I haven't talked to you about this yet, Nick. You're one of the few people I very rarely don't talk to you about these things. So we'll see what your take is when we get to it. But it's a controversial call the Giants made, at least among fans, and I was for it and supporting it after watching it on the film. But this 13-play, 66-yard drive just before halftime that ends in a field goal gives the Giants a 13-10 lead. It starts out here with a G lead run call at a 13 personnel to the field side by Saquon Barkley. I know you put in your notes, and I saw it too, man. Watch John Bostic. If we don't see this type of play from a Giants inside linebacker ever, man. And it's John frickin' Bostic, which is annoying, but at least this play went for 9 yards.
It's John frickin' Bostic, which is annoying. I love that take by you, but this
John
is
Bostic.
He is the Mike. He is the Mike, and this is 13 personnel. All three of those tight ends, triple Y set, are to the field side, and it's G lead. So what's going to happen is those three tight ends are going to block down, climb up to Cam Curl, try to climb up to John Bostic, which they do temporarily until Bostic gets to the sideline, and then they're going to pull the guard, hence G lead, and the center. So the guard and the center are both going to pull around the down blocks or just the blocks from the tight ends and Andrew Thomas. And Saquon Barkley just gets right behind John Feliciano. Nick Gates kicks out number 29, and then Barkley's right on the hip of John Feliciano as a lead blocker. A good run to start this drive, 9 yards. But look at Bostic, who's engaged with Nick Vanette. Bostic just gets outside, still flows outside the numbers, and continues to flow outside the numbers before wrapping Saquon Barkley up and kind of dragging him out of bounds. It's a really good individual effort from that linebacker, who is an older, I believe, journeyman linebacker who's been in the, who's like 30 something years old. So it's just kind of frustrating seeing like solid linebacker. It's not even a spectacular linebacker play. It's solid linebacker play. It's just the Giants don't necessarily get that. Albeit I'll say Michael McFadden had a okay game in this one, and he's a rookie. So, maybe we go lighter on him. We'll give our objective analysis on how he plays, but he's really aggressive coming downhill. And I feel like he had some solid plays on the tape that I saw.
Yeah, that's not going to be his issue anyway, I don't think, moving forward. But I would like to, I think in general, we'll talk about it later, but this will be one of my key concerns with this offseason. I need better linebacker play moving forward. I just think it's one of the biggest reasons the Giants are being held back right now, if not to me. And that doesn't mean go out in the first. People are like, oh, you can't take a linebacker in the first round. I'm not saying to do that, but I'm saying when it comes to round 2, round 3, round 4, even round 2, round 3, like, start to focus if there is a potential fit there. That's where the 49ers found Fred Warner in early part of round 3, 1 pick after BJ Hill. Fred Warner is the reason why the 49ers are the best, if not the second, third best defense in the NFL right now. He's the main reasons. If you ask all those guys, yes, they have a dominant defensive line. Yes, they have Nick Bosa. But if you ask everyone on that defense who's the most important piece that they don't want to lose, it is Fred Warner. So I think a lot of the time we think about these in like old school NFL roster building terms. Oh, you can't take a safety here. You can't do this. But then you look at a team and it's like, oh, when that safety comes off the field, like Xavier McKinney did, the Giants defense looks totally worse without him. And it's like, oh, well, maybe the safety is super important. Maybe the inside backer who is the Mike and he runs the show is super important. So it's something I'll be looking for, Nick, but we can talk about that another time. The 2nd and 1 play, it was just I think you ran it through already. It's fine. It was the quarterback sneak. I like the awareness. I saw a little bit of a check pre-snap. That might be something Kafka signaled into DJ from the box, and good because it was a 4-yard gain. Sets up this 1st and 10, the first of the H-back draws here. You can break this one down.
Halfback draw, but
sorry, not H-back. Yeah,
yeah. Imagine
that'd be sick. They have Bellinger
over here, Chris Myrick.
Yeah.
No, but this was a good play call right here. Look at the defense. Now you have press on the outside, but look how deep those safeties are. And when you look at the front, I wanted to show everybody the safeties because remember, this is right before the half. You can see these safeties bailing. Look at that defensive front. You have a 4-eye techniques with no one in the middle except for a linebacker who is a couple yards, like a yard off the ball. So you have basically 3 offensive linemen who can climb up and take on those linebackers, get John Bostic, and then keep climbing. So this is a very advantageous front to run inside on. And the little halfback draw should give the football off, and it doesn't really do anything, but I still feel like it's the right decision to do this because this is just a phenomenal play by that defensive lineman. I believe it's Jonathan Allen, who just gets right into Nick Gates's, I don't even know, his armpit and almost hump moves him off to contact Saquon Barkley. And Saquon Barkley kind of trips and falls over his feet. But look at John Feliciano already up on the 2nd level. Daniel Bellinger already up on that linebacker. You have blocks, man. Like this is,
if he gets in clean there, if Gates stays, wins or loses slowly, as you like to say, and doesn't get beat so bad, and it's not even beat so bad, it's a tough assignment, but if he gets through that hole cleanly, however it be, he can just get vertical there, like you said, between Feliciano and Bellinger, and that's like, there is safeties, there's players who will make a play on it, but he's a full head of steam at 240 at that point, screaming vertically down the field.
And that's what you would love to receive too. But that's the first halfback draw. And the second one is it's better executed. I feel like it's a similar front. The third one is not great, but you can see again here. The third one is not great. We won't talk about that. But they pick up 6 yards on that play. And now you're going to have a 2nd and 4, 3-by-1 set. You're going to fast forward Saquon Barkley, and Daniel Jones is going to find Saquon Barkley. Again, quarters coverage from Washington. Just pick up the first down. You wish these plays would go for bigger plays because you have 3 blockers here. You have 3 defenders, but you have Saquon Barkley, and one of the guys you really have to block is deep. But Well, you have the one blocker who's going to pick up that play
Look at
side
the angle
linebacker
that
as well.
safety takes. They did a great job of this. Just you talked about this earlier. The angles some of these safeties took downhill was great. I mean, he doesn't even make the play, but he's there if he needs to.
Exactly. Yeah. No, he's a good player, the number 22.
And
And
explain to the listeners what you mean, because this is something we've talked about a lot, and I don't know if we've always explained it or
yeah,
even ever explained it. What do you mean by a fast four?
yeah, we've explained it a few different times, but I know we
Okay.
have new listeners. You see how there's 3 wide receivers who are to the field side. Now, right before the snap, you take Saquon Barkley and you motion him to that 3 receiver side. So now he's the fast 4 because he's being inserted towards that side. Now, I don't know the exact coverage of Washington here. It looks like they're in some sort of quarters, and quarters has a lot of match principles. So when you insert a fast 4, that might change the assignments of the coverage, because now you have another player to that side that you have to worry about. There's no one else running routes here. This is designed to Saquon Barkley no matter what. But if it wasn't and these other players were running routes, it could be a solid way to get a miscommunication from the defense, because right before the snap, you're inserting another eligible receiver towards that side. And say if number 52 here, Jamin Davis, because Saquon Barkley is aligned to the left, the one receiver side, pre-snap, say if he has responsibility on Saquon Barkley. Well, now with Saquon Barkley going as a fast 4 to the other side, that's probably going to change. Jamin Davis doesn't follow him, right? So it's a way to try to create confusion and also get a talented playmaker on the move in space, in this case, with blockers in front of him.
Yep. And that sets up the second of 3 halfback draws on this drive. The best one, the 21-yard gain. This is the one that kind of, puts them in field goal position, gives them at least 3 points no matter what on this play. And Nick broke it down earlier, but very, very big pickup for the Giants. One of the most explosive plays of the game, 21 yards.
Yep. And you can see up front, what is it? You have the A gaps open. You have the one linebacker, and 97 makes a mistake. He tries to go inside of Mark Lewinsky, and Saquon Barkley right here. Saquon Barkley goes into the mesh point. He looks right at 97. He sees 97's going inside, and he's like, all right, that's easy. And it's one of the more easier runs you're going to get for a talent like Saquon Barkley.
Yep. Now, 1st and 10 after that big play, quarters coverage, safety's deep again. So Kafka says, this is a classic Kafka thing. Run the same play until they stop it. He doesn't care if there's one negative play involved. So again, halfback draw. This time the Washington football team is like, F this SHIT, and we are going to, I apologize there. I think I caught myself there. For those of you listening, I know we have a few listeners who listen in the kitchen or in the car with your young child. So hopefully they don't know how to spell yet, because then I'm safe. If not, I do apologize. But the Washington football team, or the Commanders, we're not giving this play up again.
No, this is a different front. Look, now you have an over front. You have, well, he's more of a 4-eye than a 3 technique, but you have this 2-eye, which is kind of the way Washington employs their over front to that weak side instead of having that A gap wide open. So they go in to hand the football off. Cameron curls really quick. He's not falling for it this time. He sees the step of Barkley and he just comes right out. And look how quick the processing is from Curl here. He sees what Barkley's doing, and then he checks, sees Bellinger running directly at him. I'm going to beat Bellinger to that set point, and I'm going to fill. And now Barkley can't hit that hole. So Barkley has to bounce it outside, and there's just no blocks to that side.
Yep. After that 4-yard loss, we set up a 2nd and 14 situation here for the Giants.
44 seconds left.
Yeah, good call. There's only 44 seconds left, so clock is working against them. They have to be cognizant of that, try to get plays toward the sideline. It's a 4-yard play out of a 3. There's a 3-by-1 set. They move Breida right out to the flat in a 3-by-1 set, and he picks up 4, gets out of bounds, and gives them a 3rd and 10 situation here, which is not 3rd and manageable, 3rd and 10. One thing that you pointed out on film in your notes, Nick, that I thought was interesting that I want to show from this sideline angle is the route combo on the 3 receiver side. This is not where the ball is going to go. You can see this is kind of like a pre-snap decision already by Jones. He's going to look off the middle of the field, second guy, and then kind of flip his hips and throw it right to Breida. But on the left side of on the bottom of your screen if you're watching, or on the left side if you're listening, out of that 3 receiver set on the left side, there's a nice route combination here by the Giants, and it does create an opening in the middle of the field if the Giants want to throw the football that way.
Yeah, this is a very nice route concept. And people will be like, well, Darius Slayton's wide open over the middle of the field. He wouldn't have been wide open if Daniel Jones didn't throw the football.
Oh, I wasn't even referring to.
No, I know you weren't. I know you weren't. But the route combination for those listening on the podcast, 3-by-1 set, Breida's to the 1 receiver side, which is the boundary side. The number 3 receiver, the innermost receiver, Isaiah Hodgins is just basically going to split the safeties. So he's running directly over the middle of the field to the opposite numbers. And then both the number 1 and the number 2, which actually that's Darius Slayton. I don't know if I said Hodgins before. The number 3 is Darius Slayton, but the number 1 and the number 2 are going to basically run like replacement slants. Isaiah Hodgins, the outermost receiver, is going to basically run like a 5, 6, 7-step slant. And then Richie James is releasing like he's doing the wheel route the Giants love to run so much. But once he reaches just outside the numbers, he pivots back inside and runs underneath Hodgins. And now you have two players in Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James who set up outside routes, specifically James, coming back inside across the middle of the field. It looks like they would have been open more than likely if the play was more oriented to go in that direction. But Jones read the defender. You can see how he's reading Daniel Bellinger's route. Let me go to the end zone angle. You can see how he's reading Daniel Bellinger's route, and he sees that cornerback and number 52, Jamin Davis, sit on Daniel Bellinger. So he just takes a talented athletic player like Matt Breida in space, picks up a couple yards.
Well broken down, sets up a 3rd and 10 situation here for the Giants. Really great individual play from Isaiah Hodgins here. This is a throw. We don't see this a lot, by the way, which is something I like. What I'm about to say, at least, we don't see a lot. I like how we haven't seen a lot of throws short of the sticks on 3rd downs. That was a staple in the Garrett offense. It's been a staple of the Patriots offense this year. Mac Jones has thrown short of the sticks on 3rd down at like an insane rate, and it's infuriating for Patriots fans, for people who follow the game. Obviously, there is a connection there with Joe Judge being heavily involved in that offensive play calling. But here it is a throw short of the sticks, and you just see Isaiah Hodgins probably catch it at the 5 yards and just figure out a way to fight for an extra 5 yards with just his physical nature and his contact balance, because he gets hit multiple times and still falls forward for an extra 5 yards in the 1st down.
Yeah, and I love how the Giants were able to get Isaiah Hodgins open, because Matt Breida flares out because Isaiah Hodgins starts to the boundary of the 3 wide receiver. So he's the lone receiver, 3-by-1 set. And you flare Matt Breida out towards the boundary. And what does that do? That's going to remove one defender. Hodgins just replaces that defender. And Richie James from the backside running a deep horizontal cross, which is going to occupy the safety, Cam Curl. So now it's Isaiah Hodgins with about 7 yards of separation on a safety. So he catches this, or I guess it's a cornerback, but the cornerback wasn't paying attention necessarily to Isaiah Hodgins, who was going inside, right? So he's looking at Hodgins, but he was more so playing that deep, might have been 3rd responsibility, maybe a deep 4th responsibility, depending on what the coverage actually was. But the fact that Hodgins is able to secure this football and still turn around and not be contacted allows Hodgins to shed one tackle, shed another tackle, and then kind of run through contact to pick up the 1st down. Nice little quick spot route. You know, sometimes just get the football out of Daniel Jones' hands. Doesn't have to be anything too creative. Quick, boom, boom, and you pick up the 1st down if your receiver can make the play like Hodgins did there.
Yep, I like how you broke that one down, Nick. Sets up a 1st and 10 situation here where the Giants run a they're in a quarters look, and they just run the fast 4 here. You see Breida pre-snap go to that side, and then it's a quarterback draw. This is something, another design run for the quarterback.
Yep, and it just picks up 2 yards. It's played.
It's too bad Lewinsky can't have a bet. Like, it's not like this is his worst block of the game, and I know the matchup's tough, but I just feel like if we had some kind of beast at guard here, this play could have been bigger.
I mean, Gates loses pretty badly to Jonathan Allen.
Gates loses bad too. Yeah,
it's both of the guards on this play that kind of mess up. And look, you're not going to draw too many worse matchups than the combination of Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen. So it's really hard for the interior to block. But as we know, this is a big weak point for the New York Giants, is the interior offensive line.
Sets up a 2nd and 8 here. You'll see a backside drag from Richie James. On the sideline angle, you can see a cool route combination, I thought at least, to clear out that space for that backside drag. It's just a wheel route. And look at the space created by the wheel route. It really takes a lot of the defenders out, or it takes that main defender you need out of the play.
It does. And I think that was the first read for the play, because you have a deep spot route from Darius Slayton who's going to hold that deep defender, but whoever's on Saquon Barkley, who runs the wheel to the boundary, I think it's Jamin Davis, just is on top of the route. So Jones does a really good job coming off that concept and knowing, as he should know, because the Giants run stuff like this all the time, that the backside drag should be open because everything else was cleared out. And he takes it, and Richie James isn't able to get the 1st down. He's able to get it down to a 3rd and 1 situation, 7 yards off this play design. But Richie James is wide open at this point. And Jones, good job coming off the wheel, not trying to force it, and then finding James in space.
This was one of many weird spots by the ref. I feel like one thing if Matt Schneier, shout out my brother if you're listening, something he always makes fun of me for. I always feel like when I'm watching NFL games, especially when I'm at the game and I'm watching from the stands with him, the spots, there's like multiple horrible spots a game, and he'll always make a joke. I'm like, every yard counts, because I really like spot that there, spot that. Like I always feel like I personally, Nick, and we'll see if this ever happens, I will welcome the day when if the NFL makes a decision. I know a lot of people are like, no, this is how it's supposed to be. You need the refs. But I will welcome a day if they start using a computer chip to get the spots right. I don't care what people think. I think that it should just be where the ball is supposed to be spotted. Like there's so many times I see watching the NFL where a receiver or running back reaches the ball out. When the knee hits, the ball is placed in a certain spot. The rule is supposed to be, where's the ball when the knee hits? And then they spot it like a yard and a half back from that. And I just get so angry. And I just can't wait till the day they use a computer chip, if they do, because I'm not a part of the old school camp. It's like, no, you can't do that. It has to be just use the refs. No, use a computer chip. Why would we not want to get this right?
100%. I don't even understand the argument against it. It's one of those old-fashioned just arguments that I feel like an old curmudgeon would make. I mean, soccer's doing it a fantastic job with the same exact thing right now. Tennis does it. Why not football? Football's $1 billion industry. There's no reason not to do that.
That's a great point. And look how fast soccer does it. They've got it down really well. They do it. It's like really simultaneous. Those offsides, boom, they know it right away. So anyway, just a little gripe I have was there's some bad spots in this game. Not just against the Giants.
Yeah. And one more thing, too. I know I saw this play being broken down by some people on Twitter that Daniel Jones was kind of getting criticized for not throwing it to Daniel Bellinger at this point. Daniel Jones, to me, is making the decision to throw it to Richie James right now.
There's no way. You can't throw that to Bellinger anyway.
Yeah, Cameron Curl is right there, and you have two safeties. That would have to be.
This would be the worst. This would be the dumbest decision ever if he tried to make that throw to Bellinger.
Yeah, there's just a lot of this crowd. And look, right here, it looks like Bellinger is coming open, but one reason is because Curl is coming off of Bellinger because he anticipates that that drag is getting thrown, rightfully so. You also have the safety over here who's staying on top of whoever that is, with the other safety kind of flowing in that direction. I think it looks good on paper, but I'm fine with this decision to just check it down, essentially, I guess you could
look
say.
Good on paper, dude.
To Richie James. Yeah. I know, like, this is the view that people were going over. Like right here.
Yeah, it looks like he's open there. The ball's already out,
Yes, yes. And even like right here.
Even if he tried to throw this with the anticipation right here,
he's reading it. Jones is reading it too. Like he checked it. It's not like it was past him, but you could see that there's
this throw. You're gonna get your tight end laid out by that safety.
Yeah, the safety on the backside too.
And even the backside safety too. We don't even see in the shot, but he can make a play on it too. You would have to like rip this ball with insane ball placement and velocity. This is not a throw that a quarterback.
It's just an insane play by Curl too, because Curl's on Bellinger, and right here he's like, oh, he's not throwing to Bellinger. Like if Curl doesn't come off this, Richie James, then he has the 86.
The other guy
player kind of comes off it too, but it's a good play by Curl nonetheless.
Yeah, that is. If somebody's criticizing Daniel Jones for that, they're doing a poor job, because you could find other examples. That's not one of them. And so, just don't do that. It doesn't sound.
Yeah, we're not criticizing him here. We just wanted to acknowledge it because I saw it.
Yeah, I don't know who did that. I didn't see this, but just don't do that. Anyway, and it's all right. Like, you're trying. I actually saw something today that brings this up. I don't like the people who are like, and maybe it was based on this, and that's fine, but I don't like the people who are like, oh, I'm sure, like, I think it was Giant Insiders, like, I hate how people have the all 22 now. It's so bad. Like, don't we want people to learn? Like, there's so much you can learn from watching the tape. Even if you don't know what to look for entirely, you're still learning so much more by seeing it from that angle versus what you see on the broadcast, especially in the pass game. So it's like, I am not in that camp of let's push away from, I'm in the camp of let's get more people access. Let's get this more mainstream. Because it's what we do. It's not just because what we do and it's fun to do. It's because you learn a lot more about football when you watch from that angle. So I don't know. I just didn't like that conversation. I don't like the gatekeeping. You know me. I hate the fan gatekeeping. I hate you can't do this. You shouldn't do this. You should do that. No, just let people do what they want. And it's not hurting anyone. Like this, even if whoever did that play, like, and who said you should have thrown to Bellinger. Okay. He made a bad, interpretation of that play. I have plenty of bad interpretation of plays. And I'm sure even you, Nick, who feel, you're much further along in the film than I am as a film analyst. You have plenty of takes that you probably wish you had back where you had a bad interpretation. But that doesn't mean we should just shun him and say, you shouldn't be doing anything and you don't belong in this. Like, you can just, it's better to just have the conversation of, look, man, you can't make that throw because of this and this and this, like we just broke down. And then you learn from that and you adjust from that. It's like, I don't like that you should now because he did this, it's just, I don't know, man. It bothers me. It always has. I hate the fan gatekeeping.
Yeah.
But
the fan gatekeeping is unacceptable. Like, let's just learn the game and have a good time talking about it. We all love this game, right?
It doesn't hurt anyone. Like, if he makes if I make a bad interpretation, we can just accept it, acknowledge it, and move on. And no one is in pain. No, there's no one hurt. No one's family is hurt. Like, it's okay. Like, it's gonna be all right. But anyway, we'll move forward past that. We'll get to this 3rd and 1 play. This is an interesting one for me because this is a good example of what I was just talking about. I have an initial read on this play, and I posted it on Twitter, and then Jeff Schwartz, former Giants offensive lineman, said, responded to it or quote tweeted it. And now I have a different interpretation of the play because he knows more football than me, and he had a different read on it. My original interpretation is I like the call by Mike Kafka. Why do I like the call? Because it's not what Washington is expecting. It's a zone read call here, and I feel like if Evan Neal can make that block right there that you're seeing on the screen, this could be a touchdown. I've seen Daniel Jones beat harder angles if that block is made. But as Jeff Schwartz just tweeted at me, and I'm going to show you his breakdown of the play, Nick. Jeff Schwartz said, sometimes the defense wins a rep. Washington was prepared for this call. Neal is doing exactly as he should. He's expecting the ball to be given on the zone read. There you go. To the running back to be given. And he says, ideally, Jones keeps the ball and runs directly downhill inside of Neal's block instead of where he ran. And he said Allen on a run stunt might have changed Daniel Jones's course. But he said this is a specific way defenses can stop this play, and it takes a lot of reps between the offensive tackle Evan Neal and the quarterback Daniel Jones to get this done correctly and execute it successfully against this look. So what are your thoughts on all that?
No, I think he's spot on. And also, man, like 22's here as well. Like 22's behind Evan Neal. There's a couple unblocked guys, but it's Jonathan Allen really is the issue because you could see how, I don't know who that defender is, the one with the yellow gloves. I think it's Deron Payne, just runs right into John Feliciano. And now Jonathan Allen is coming right back towards Daniel Jones. And Evan Neal is trying to block a much smaller defender in space. As you said, zone read means there's a read. There's an option to it. So Evan Neal thinks that he has to cut off that angle to either allow Daniel Jones to get vertical or Saquon Barkley to get the football in that situation. I like listening to these former players, man. They add such a great perspective. But yeah, that sounds very, very accurate, obviously.
Yeah. And so maybe not as good a call as I originally thought, because I just think of it like, and I'll bring this reference up for anyone who's played it. And if you haven't, if you're listening to this podcast, it's because you love X's and O's. So I really suggest you buy this with your son or with your friend and try the game the board game Stratomatic Football. But in that game, Nick, there are times where you get yourself in like a 3rd and 10 or like any kind of obvious pass down situation. And it's actually good to call the run because of the way your opponent, the defense, sets up his entire defense and calls run to try to defend a run. So I feel, or a pass to try to defend a pass. So it's like kind of one of those situations, I thought, where you can catch him off guard and run a play that. But like Jeff Schwartz said, that somehow, some way, Washington was super prepared for this run, for this to be a run play, even though everything else screamed the Giants can't run here. They're running out of time. They don't have a timeout. They'd have to rush to spike the ball. But despite all that, Washington was prepared for this. So kudos to them.
The Giants run enough zone read to be prepared for that.
Yeah, I guess you're just always we've run it so much. You can always,
and especially when you're in a shotgun with Saquon Barkley offset you. Yeah. Like that's something that the Giants have done. I don't even know how many times, but plenty of times this season.
Yep. Okay, so that brings us to halftime. Giants take a 13-10 lead. And on their first possession of the second half, their only good possession of the second half, they get a short field. They're at the 20-yard line because of a turnover created by their defense, a forced sack fumble by Azeez Ojulari, which I can't wait to break down tomorrow or whenever we do this, which will most likely be tomorrow. So short field, what do you want? You want to cash in with a touchdown, and that's exactly what the Giants do. That's what it's all about when you get these short fields. Don't settle for 3. And so a lot of props to them, but it starts off with this GH counter. Again, Giants running it all game at this point. And nowhere to go. 1-yard gain. Once again, John Bostic here, the middle linebacker, plays this really freaking well.
Yeah, Bostic really positions himself advantageously to stop this. This is out of the single back, and you could see that Deron Payne, you have Chris Myrick trying to block down on Deron Payne, or no, Nick Vannett, I'm sorry. And it's just bad, and he just ends up intercepting Nick Gates. So you eliminate Nick Gates from the play, because if you could block down on Deron Payne here, which I would never expect a tight end to do so. So it's kind of bad from that standpoint. You could have Nick Gates as a lead blocker around that block, but even with Deron Payne penetrating, taking on Nick Gates, then you have Daniel Bellinger getting right to 52. It's just John Bostic does such a good job beating Evan Neal to the gap and then just kind of getting really low and turning around Evan Neal. And you can see how Evan Neal's not in position to make that play, and John Bostic makes the tackle. So it's just a really good linebacker play from Bostic, 59, who might be 59 years old.
I don't think he's 59 yet, but I mean,
He's like 30,
that,
I think.
I know he was like never that good in his prime. So this may be like a career game for Bostic on film. I don't know. This could be the potentially John Bostic's best game of his entire career. Game against the Giants in a 2020 tie, where if he had done just like 2 or 3 things worse, they probably win the game. So just screw that. It's annoying, but it is what it is. Sets up a second.
Look how just disciplined these linebackers and second level defenders are. It's a counter run. So counter run means that you fake going one way, and you can see how Daniel Jones opens up and then just turns the other way and hands a football off. You have both those lead blockers, but watch 59 just stay square the entire time. It's like perfect technique. Stay square, tight to the line of scrimmage, dip your outside or inside shoulder around Evan Neal, position yourself right in the hole. That's just perfect right there from John Bostic. And you can see how Jamin Davis takes on Chris Myrick or whoever that is, pulling, sets to the outside. It's just excellent linebacker play.
Yeah, it really is. They play this night and day watching the Giants linebackers and these linebackers. I don't really know why they haven't. I mean, they invested heavily in Jamin Davis, but they also are getting like crazy play from John Bostic. But whatever, it is what it is. You're watching the 2nd down and 9 play here, 12 personnel. We got a play action rollout here to the left, to the quarterback's left, away from his throwing shoulder. And he's going to find Daniel Bellinger in the flat. We've seen this work a lot. It is another post wheel call to the boundary side, and that's what kind of clears out the space for Daniel Bellinger. As usual, the Giants are not throwing the post or the wheel. That's okay, probably. When you watch it on the sideline view, you'll understand why this is the correct decision to go to Bellinger, and it creates a 4-yard or a 5-yard gain, I should say, to set up a 3rd and 4.
Yeah, and a lot of the times the Giants shouldn't throw the post wheel. It's usually covered,
right?
And you just get the football to the guy who's cleared out, which is something the Giants have done this entire season.
Yeah, for sure. Sets up a 3rd and 4 here. This is the play I referenced earlier where I was just like, damn, dude, like you see running backs who are not going to make this play. This is how good of a run it is by Daniel Jones. Like his vision is wild for a quarterback when he's on these design runs. Like this is a 7-yard run by Jones to create a 1st down on a 3rd and 5. It's a fast 4 with 3-by-1 set, but just like, look at that cutback by Daniel Jones. First of all, the ability to stop and start is incredible for a quarterback there, in my mind, at least. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks can't do this. And then not only the ability to stop and start, the lateral agility to shift his body weight back and yet vertical here. In addition to the best thing, which I haven't even said yet, which is the vision here. Just a wild play here. This is one of the coolest plays I've seen from a quarterback as a runner in a long time. I mean, we don't watch, we're not watching every quarterback, but damn, man, like this is impressive stuff to me.
It's such a beautiful run by Daniel Jones to get outside. This is a boundary run. You use a fast 4, and you can see Cameron Curl doesn't fall for it. 52 gets out to match Saquon Barkley. 31 goes right to Daniel Jones' side. John Feliciano ends up picking him off. And right at this point, you have 96 and 34 who are containing Jones. Jones knows that he has both of these blockers coming. So he just waits and is patient and cuts back. That is just such a beautiful run by Jones. Such a freaking great run. Like you said, man, there are running backs who don't even do this. Really talented ones who don't even do that.
Seriously, dude. There's like, it's crazy. There are a lot of running backs who won't recognize that cutback lane, and I'll just try to win to the edge there or just not even recognize. I don't know, man. That was really impressive. Gives us a chance to score a touchdown on this drive, because if not, we get stopped up there. We're kicking a field goal. We know how we do on 4th and short in the red zone. So 1st and 10 here, little 1-yard run for Saquon Barkley again, GH counter. And we just start to see, as we kind of have, good evidence of this now, a large sample size, this GH counter is just not working for the Giants in this game.
No, the linebackers aren't falling for it. They're not falling for any sort of fake move. They're doing it out of shotgun. They're trying out a single back. They're trying out a variety of different formations. It doesn't matter. It's just not getting anything done. Look how many white jerseys are around the play side. And even like Andrew Thomas, as good as he is, he gets beat bad by Jonathan Allen here. He gets swum over the top. You don't see that a lot from Andrew Thomas, right? But watch, he engages Jonathan Allen. Jonathan Allen just pulls him and swims right over the top to help make this tackle. So the blocking just not good in this game.
Not good at all, but it sets up this fun play, the 2nd and goal from the 6-yard line. One of my favorite plays of the game here. Off the play action, quick hitter to Isaiah Hodgins. Look at the route by Hodgins. I mean, this is one of the best routes I've seen from a Giants receiver in it. I mean, look, there were some great ones on film over the last couple of weeks, couple of whip routes from Slayton that stood out, but this was a filthy route in the red zone in an area the Giants have struggled to pass the ball for touchdowns for 3 straight years, and now they have a red zone passing touchdown with a really great route from Hodgins.
Hodgins is 6'4" and he's able to do this. He gets this cornerback
Right.
to bite inside. He sells that so well because he just runs a little in fake, right? Turns his shoulders, turns his head, flips his entire hips, and then just pivots back outside, just like a little whip route type thing. Easy touchdown. Like, he's wide open. Look at the amount of separation in tight quarters that a guy who is that big creates.
The ball can be thrown anywhere, really, and it's going to be a touchdown there. That's
how
good the route was.
Exactly. We talked a lot about Colin Johnson and how fluid Colin Johnson was. And I think Colin Johnson might have a little bit more fluidity than Isaiah Hodgins, but for a big receiver, Isaiah Hodgins has some fluidity to him. And this is a beautiful example of the fluidity that he possesses.
I think that's what drew the Giants to Hodgins, and that's why they scooped him up. And similar with Colin Johnson, a player who the last regime brought in, but we saw in the preseason before his injury in the training camp, the Giants had a huge role for Colin Johnson in mind. And this is, they like those big receivers with fluidity. And I we'll get to it at the end of this pod probably, but man, when we get to superlatives, but I'm a Isaiah Hodgins fan, dude. This is my guy. Like, I think he's underrated. There are snaps I see on film where he's running those crossers and those overs and he's open. I think he does a great job every time the ball's in his vicinity. He's tough. He's physical at the catch point. Like you said, he has a lot of fluidity and good feet for a guy that big. I don't know. I like it. And this was a huge play he made.
It was a gigantic play he made. And also, let's watch Nick Gates looking for work as he always does. Annihilate 96. Yep, it's the Gates special
for work.
And you can see how he's even looking right here. He's like, yeah, I think I can just absolutely annihilate 96. Let me do so. Okay, let me get to the hip and run right through it.
He does that all the time. People must hate playing against the Giants when Gates is in the lineup, I feel like. But we'll roll forward to the 7th drive here. Now you start to get to the weird part of this game, right? Because that first drive, they got the turnover with the Z's forced sack fumble, touchdown right away. And then we keep seeing this, man. I feel like the story of this season for me, one of the trends has been the Giants never have the ball at times for like long stretches of games in like the second half. Like we talked about on the reaction pod, Washington had the football for half the entire game with their first their first 2 drives. This is partially because we went 3 and out a bunch, but man, there's just very few minutes spent on offense the rest of the game after this, which is never a good sign. It's hard to win a game when you're not on the offense side of the ball. That's generally speaking the only way you can score points. There are pick sixes, fumble sixes, things of that nature, special teams touchdowns. All those are uncommon, uncharted territory for the Giants in 2022. For the most part, we haven't had much. Have we had any? Wow, I'm trying to rack my brain here. Have we had a single defensive or special teams touchdown yet? We had a defensive, right? No?
I don't think we've had a defensive touchdown. No.
I think we had a single defensive or special teams touchdown all season.
We've had special teams turnovers, and I mean, like, even interceptions are few and far between for the Giants. They had 2 against Dallas a few weeks ago. Before that, they only had 2 the entire season.
But neither pick sixes, no fumble sixes, I don't think either. So no defensive touchdowns or special teams touchdown all seasons. It's a tough one. That's like you're losing on the luck side a little bit there, I feel like, or the variance side. But yeah, so for us, we want to be on offense. The only way we could score, I guess, this season at least. So the 7th drive is a 3 and out. It's the start of several 3 and outs and 4 and outs. And we'll try to break down what went wrong here. We'll try to look at the play calling as we get to overtime. I'll have some thoughts on that. But the first play of this 7th drive, 3 and out, is a 12 personnel look. They run the play action here. This is actually one of their more successful plays for the rest of the game. It's only 8 yards here. 2 things I wanted to point out about this play and get your take on, Nick. The first is, look how beautiful this pocket looks. This is how you draw it up. This is a picture perfect pocket. You can see from either angle, the end zone, the sideline. I mean, this is an all day type pocket. There is nothing to worry about here. You'll see from the end zone even better. So Jones can really do whatever he wants with this. He ends up taking the check down here to Bellinger off of his chip and release. I know you said maybe it might be cool if he dumps that to Barkley, who's right in front of him instead, because then Bellinger's a lead blocker. But I think there are other options for Jones on this play, to be completely honest. He doesn't actually, I mean, it looks like after the snap, and you could tell me what you think from the end zone angle, he's reading that second level defender, but there is a whole shot to be had here on the bottom of your screen if you're watching on YouTube, on that little corner out route by, who is that on the bottom of the screen? Is that Hodgins?
Darius Slayton.
It's Slayton on the bottom, which is your number 1 guy. There is a lot of space in that hole. That is what a hole shot is. And if you have a perfect pocket like that and a lot of time, I personally would like him to take the hole shot here instead for, the 15, 20-yard gain.
He doesn't even know that it's there. That's the issue.
Yep.
Because it goes to cover 2. It goes to Tampa 2. You can see 59 Bostic drop to that deep middle portion of the middle hook type of the field in the intermediate parts, right? So Darius Slayton's in a reduced set to the boundary side inside the numbers, and the player who's over the top of him is in a press alignment. So is the player over the top of Isaiah Hodgins on the opposite side. Like I said, 12 personnel, tight end on each side. Both of those guys are going to chip and release. Darius Slayton's cornerback blitzes. So Chris Myrick or Nick Vannett, I believe, actually takes him. I don't think Daniel Jones knows this because it's a single back play action pass. And if he did know it, I think he would have certainly thrown to the boundary side, which he typically throws to anyway, against a defensive look where you have this unathletic, or not unathletic, but you have a linebacker dropping to the curl flat, but mostly watching Nick Vannett. And then the deep half safety inside the numbers against a corner route of Darius Slayton. Once Darius Slayton pivots on the corner route at the numbers, he has the numbers to the sideline with no one around him. It would have been a huge play, but Daniel Jones never looks, it doesn't seem like to me at least, never really looks in that direction. And I think it's because he didn't even know that cornerback blitzed and that he had this wide open pass to Darius Slayton. So he just took what he felt like was the best option, which was Daniel Bellinger. But if he just kept his eyes up or knew that player blitzed and knew that it was cover 2, then I think he would have definitely at least attempted to throw this football to Darius Slayton, because I can't even describe to you how wide open he is.
Yeah, I mean, this is as open as it gets. This is more than open in the NFL. They say 1 yard of separation is open. There's a massive hole between the safety and the sideline there. So you don't even have to be accurate to make this pass. And if you do throw this ball accurately, there's a chance for the receiver to turn up the field and hit the sideline burners, and just maybe score a touchdown on this. I don't know. It would have to be great ball play. Great, amazing, pinpoint, perfect ball placement and velo will get you a touchdown on this play, I think, if you allow the receiver to catch and turn upfield, because safety is pretty out of position. But at worst, you just throw a pretty solid ball. It gets caught in that hole. He gets hit out of bounds, and it's like an 18 to 20-yard gain. We see that all the time in the NFL. But I will say this, Nick, I agree that on this specific scenario, if he recognized this, the blitzing D-back, and knew that that's what he had, he would throw this. But for whatever reason, dude, we just don't see hole shots in this offense. We have not seen hole shots thrown a lot at all this season compared to a lot of other NFL teams. We just haven't seen the hole shots thrown. And I don't think it's an arm talent issue for Jones. So it's just something that I think about always when I think about this team, because really what stood out to me was watching that Trevor Lawrence comeback a couple weeks ago. I believe, who were they playing that game?
Baltimore.
That whole comeback was made possible because Trevor Lawrence was throwing hole shots almost the entire comeback. He was just beating zone coverage by throwing these types of throws outside the numbers. And by outside the numbers, I mean, think of an NFL field. For those of you listening, you see the 30 and the 30. You see the 2 numbers on the field outside of those, not inside, like toward the middle of the field. So those are the toughest throws to make. Those are, more importantly, the toughest throws to defend. That's why it was so hard to stop Lawrence on that comeback run. And so I just hope at some point, with the Daniel Jones experience, we start to see more hole shots come out more often. And again, I'm not saying this is his fault at all, by the way. It's just something that I haven't seen a lot of and would like to see more of.
See, right at this moment, we're freezing it on YouTube. He goes in the play action, hits his back foot. It looks like he's looking to his right where Darius Slayton is. And then it looks like he peers and sees that middle linebacker maybe sinking. He sees Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen kind of in underneath coverages. Maybe he thinks Jamin Davis can work underneath it, but it looks like his eyes are towards Darius Slayton. He just doesn't, I don't think he's aware that 36 is coming on the blitz. So I don't know if he doesn't know where 36 is or whatnot, but he just goes right and transitions to Daniel Bellinger. Like, this is one of those situations where it's like, I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. But when you do watch the tape and you see his eyes kind of go in that direction right here, it's like, did he not see Darius Slayton? No, he must not have, but like, it seems kind of like a big oversight by Jones on this specific play.
For sure. That's what we do here. We're not just going to not talk about the plays that we wish would have gone differently. And I think it's fair. Like, we don't know everything about everything, but I think it's fair to say this is a wasted opportunity. I mean, there's a massive hole shot opportunity, bigger than most hole shots are. You usually don't see that much space between the D-back, or it's the second level and the third level for the whole shot to be thrown. But whatever, it's an 8-yard gain instead of like a 20-yard gain or more. But
Feliciano just absolutely annihilates his guy too.
Yeah, I mean, look, the pocket's filthy. You just saw it from that end zone angle. This is the best pocket they had all game.
Yeah, yeah. Watch Feliciano on the end zone angle. Boom, right there. Just
Yeah.
absolutely deplete this kid. But yeah, get the ball to Daniel Bellinger, and like you said, unfortunately, on the chip and release, his 8-yard gain is one of the best plays that the Giants had for the rest of the game. Like that's how pathetic
Yes.
this offense is
And
about
what
to
makes
get.
it more unfortunate is deciding to go with that little check down for 8 yards does ultimately matter, because if you hit that whole shot for it would have been a minimum 15, the drive continues. Instead, plays later, they're punting the football. So that 8 yard did make, that non-first down made a difference here. But we'll just break down these next two plays before they punt. It starts off here with just the Giants saying, we're in second. This is some of the things that I sometimes question, Nick. Like, do we really need to just fully? I feel like every time we've been in these second and short situations, we've almost always not taken shots down the field. We almost never dial up shot plays. We're always looking for the first down, which was the Jason Garrett way. And maybe that is because he doesn't trust his offensive line. He doesn't trust his receivers. And by he, I mean Mike Kafka. And so it's fine. He's like, I don't want to get a negative play. I don't want to call play action, get sacked, and screw our drive over. But I just feel like those are the best opportunities as an offense to actually connect on and successfully create a splash play down the field on second and short situations, because you set up, you make it look like a run, everyone's guessing run. And so I don't know, man. It's just something I think about when I watch this offense. We just don't typically get aggressive on those second and third and short situations. We're always looking to pick up the first down, which is what it is. But in this situation, we run into what looks like to me, like, I'll get your take on this, a 9-man box with just 8 guys blocking. I don't know how you expect to have success here. That's my question for you. Like, there are 9 guys right here in the box for the Washington Commanders, and the second level is lined up pretty damn close to the line of scrimmage. You have 8 guys to block 9. How does that work?
It didn't. The Giants got tackled at the line of scrimmage, and it's 13 personnel. You're trying to run towards your strength. And like we brought up a little bit earlier, you're trying to just block down 94 and then have John Feliciano kick out 52 or 29. But it looks like just not the best idea, because nobody really takes 95. 95 comes right in and is able to intercept John Feliciano, and then nobody else is pulling. Nick Gates kind of falls down, but even then, like, who is he going to pick up? Washington just played this very well, and this was one of those play calls. I'll get the play back up. I know it just went away, but this is one of those play calls that I just didn't really appreciate, because I didn't see the path to success.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine there could be a path to success when you have 8 guys to block 9. It's just that doesn't work in the NFL. You want the advantage in the box, or at least you want it to be an even number, like 8 guys to block 8 guys or 7 to 7. You don't want to be doing this too often where you're running against 9-man boxes that look like that. It's hard.
To the play side, since you're pulling John Feliciano,
Yeah,
you're
you have
going
to
to
run
be
away from that defender, right?
you're going to be you're going to be even, because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Unless he
6.
makes a play on the backside.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then with Feliciano. But the thing is, you're even with 3 tight ends. So
True.
you're really relying on these 3 tight ends to win their one-on-one matchups. One of the tight ends is going up against freaking Daron Payne. Like, how is he going to win that? And also, Evan Neal doesn't really get to block anybody or climb up to 59. He kind of just gets engulfed. And then you have Daniel Bellinger locate 59, but then nobody locates 52. And you have 3 Washington defenders in the face of John Feliciano with Saquon Barkley behind him. It's just a play that kind of seemed doomed to begin with, especially since the execution wasn't perfect. But even still, Washington was all over it and knew exactly what the Giants were trying to do.
Yep. And that sets up a 3rd and 2 situation where the Giants try to pick up the first down after gaining no yards here. They run a play action counter. It looks like here, and they are just able to get 1 yard here. They're not able to pick up the first down. This is a big momentum swing here. They try to run this play that they, like you said, they like to run a lot. It's not there on the release by Hodgins, so Jones decides to run the football, and he's not able to get it.
No, and Cameron Curl comes down, makes a really impressive tackle. Isaiah Hodgins is kind of draped in coverage by 36. That's the read. That's where you want to throw the football to, but there's really no space to throw the football. So Daniel Jones right now sees that, and he's like, okay, I can outrun 95 to the inside. He does exactly that, but what happens? Washington defenders just rally. He picks up 1 yard, and now the Giants have to punt the football.
Let's look at that from the sideline angle real quick, Nick. There's no adjustment to be made, and this is not the play call. I'm sure there's no audible, but like, I can only imagine, dude, if they had just run play action roll out with Jones, he might have just been able to get the angle and pick up that first down with his, because he's a great runner in space. Like, I know there is that end man who's going to have a trouble, but like, if you have Hodgins just try to block down on him instead of block and release, I just feel like Daniel Jones can get 2 yards on that. I don't
Well,
know.
if you look at the employment of the offensive lineman, Evan Neal is on the counter side
Right.
with Andrew Thomas. So I think from a mental standpoint, Kafka's trying to fool Washington to say, look, we're going to run our counter. Look, we're pulling Mark Lewinsky around. He's going to pull. And now you have Evan Neal and Andrew Thomas to that side. But that leaves who? Cunningham and just Cunningham and Isaiah Hodgins to the roll side. So honestly, if you look at Washington's defense right here, they kind of fall for it. The only one who doesn't is that end man on the line of scrimmage, and then the cornerback
And he
who's
blows
covering
up the play, unfortunately.
It's just that, that end man on
Yeah.
the line of scrimmage does such a good job
If he
containing.
doesn't do that, you're right. It would have worked because Jones would have ran it.
Because look, they're all biting on Saquon
Yeah.
Barkley. Cameron Curl doesn't realize what's going on until Jones is almost committing to running the football. So it almost worked. It's just the execution was a little bit off, which seems to be the story of this entire half.
Correct. So we set up an 8th drive of the game, another 3 and out, unfortunately, for the Giants offense. This drive goes absolutely nowhere due to penalties. It ends up being a negative 5-yard drive here. It starts off here with H-back pitch. So, or I'm sorry, halfback pitch. I don't know why I keep calling it H-back, halfback pitch. At this point, you can see the Giants, they're ready for these types of plays, Washington. This is a negative 1-yard play here. Immediate penetration. I actually thought Feliciano did a good job on this play. I was just focusing. If we're just looking at like someone who I thought did a good job on this play, I thought Feliciano did a great job with his rep, even though he does get tossed to the ground. I think he does a good job of just kind of pushing his guy or getting his guy out of the way. But it's the pursuit from who is that? 90 or who's that who makes the tackle there? 91.
Well, Cam Curl makes the tackle.
Or 31, yeah, Cam Curl.
Yeah, but Jonathan Allen also, his feet get tripped up. He kind of trips over Nick Gates right here, which allows Feliciano to almost manhandle him, but Jonathan Allen just kind of suplexes Feliciano to the ground because Jonathan Allen
creates that space, like even though it's not the prettiest way. Like if Curl doesn't make that tackle, I think this is a decent gain.
Yeah, and I think that might be on our guy Daniel Bellinger because Bellinger kind of gets to the hip right here. You can see 3 offensive linemen kind of acting as if they're going to block down, but nobody accounts for Cam Curl, who's just outside of the box. He pinches down, and it looks like Bellinger realizes he's a little bit late. So Barkley tries to cut it inside off the block of Feliciano and Andrew Thomas, but Curl gets enough contact to bring down Barkley. Even though it's not a lot of contact, it's enough to just kind of slow him down, and he falls. It just seems like Washington's defense at this point, Dan, is just buzzing, right? Like, look at them all play. Cam Curl steps right down. He's already in the backfield where Daniel Bellinger is. You have linebacker, who is that Bostic, kind of scrape over the top. The net ends up making a pretty solid block on him. But if Curl doesn't make the tackle here, Barkley might be able to explode into space, probably end up getting tackled by Deron Payne, who's in pursuit against Evan Neal from the backside. But execution wasn't perfect, and here we are.
Yep. And then there's a penalty, which sets up a 2nd and 20 situation.
Here's the penalty play, too. So this is going to be the penalty play by Nick Vannett. Well, it's actually by Daniel Bellinger, but Nick Vannett ends up catching his ball, and that's the play. That little just jolt. 96 kind of throws his hands up to facilitate the hold. Not the best look, but it's just a play action rollout to the double Y side. You can see how the spacing's a little bit different. Vannett acts like he's blocking down, rolls out. Good job by Vannett right there to work to the outside of number 22. You see how 22 is coming down. He's right on Vannett, but he just kind of allows 22 to go after Daniel Jones and just presents a target for a catch for like 7 or 8 yards, but then or actually it's 9 yards. Then there's a 10-yard penalty though.
Yeah, penalty killed him. 2nd and 20. Jones throws hot here, just a 4-yard gain.
Yeah, right to Daniel Bellinger, who does a good job presenting a target right in front of Cam Curl. This might be one of those choice routes that we talk about. Like Bellinger is a really smart player, right? So he sees that linebacker blitzes, which means there's going to be a 2-versus-1 and a 5-man protection against Andrew Thomas. And it looks like the protection slides to the right. So Daniel Jones needs to throw hot. Bellinger realizes that, presents a target, makes a contested catch to pick up a couple yards, set up a 3rd and 16 though.
Yeah, 3rd and 16 is a tough spot to get out of here. They try their 2nd screen of the game. This one not to Barkley, this one to Slayton, and it's just completely blown up. Yeah,
it wasn't really executed well or didn't really fool anybody, it didn't seem like. But look at the off leverage that Washington is playing with to the 3 receiver side. All you have is the one cornerback about 4 yards off Darius Slayton, and then the safety is 15 yards away. There's just so much space. So take the screen. It's just Richie James doesn't really execute that block that he needs to on that cornerback. If Richie James is able to get a clean block on the cornerback, Darius Slayton catches his ball and then runs up the alley. It might have been interesting. I think 52 catches him in pursuit, but you have a bunch of blockers in space, but you need to execute that first block. It's the most important block, and it just was not done.
Yep. So another 3 and out here for the Giants offense brings us to our 9th drive here after this one, which is a 4 and out. But this one was also kind of messed up because of the Feliciano unnecessary roughness. We start with that play here. I love this job by the Giants here to attack the off coverage here. It's a cover 3 look pre-snap. And, teams are now giving the kind of respect that Darius Slayton deserves. When you take that many deep shots a game to Slayton, the Giants have, and even just 1 or 2 is a lot in the NFL. You have to play more off coverage against him. You do not want to get burned. And so this is, the coverage call regardless, but quick hitch, throw back on the comeback, and a nice 12-yard gain. And then you see at the end of this play, Feliciano kind of come up and do that,
look at Dable's face right here. Let's watch Dable. And this is the moment where Dable realizes, what are you doing, John? Oh, no, don't do that. Don't do it.
And you see that ref pull for the flag. And, yeah, just super disappointing here because, if you don't get that flag, and they're pretty damn close to Gano range. And I think, that's 3 points that would have probably decided the game, to be completely honest.
Yeah, they would have took a 10-point lead.
Yeah. But obviously, the stupid penalty was made, so they have to go back. They get the first down anyway. They try to run PA slide here, and you can see this was the other call I mentioned earlier to Slayton. This time, it just doesn't work as well. Washington's ready for it, and partially there's that penetration, I believe, like against the tight end, and that kind of screws up Slayton's path in my mind, and it has him. You can see there Slayton tries to has to readjust his path, and that kind of screws him up, takes away maybe some yardage, but it's only a 3-yard gain here.
It is, and Jamin Davis just shows his athletic ability because he falls for the play action part of this. Play action single back. Darius Slayton comes across a formation, sliding underneath. Jones just gives him that ball, and watch how Jamin Davis is able to step. He's all the way at the top of the emblem in the middle of the field. He gets outside the numbers and makes a really athletic tackle on Darius Slayton.
Yeah, Jamin Davis. Darisaw probably should have been the pick, obviously, if we're looking at this hindsight-wise, right? Like hindsight's always 20/20, but give me Jamin Davis over the Chiefs' compensatory 3rd-round pick and a 6th-round pick. I'll tell you that.
I wonder who you're referring to.
I just hate those picks. What are we going to do? Hopefully we hit a Bellinger. That's our best bet, and that would be sick if we could. But those are late picks, man, especially the 6th, but even the late 3rd is not great. But it is what it is. Tony was an a-hole, and now he's injured again. So it's like this dude can't get on the field. So it's just kind of just a bad pick from the start from Dave Gettleman. But one final gift from the idiot. Sorry for those who hate when I reference. It's been a long time, I think, since I referenced Dave Gettleman. I feel like I haven't talked about him in 4 weeks straight of podcasts. So give me some credit there for those of you who say I like to harp on Gettleman, and also kind of try to appreciate the fact that this dude is the reason why the Giants have all the issues they have right now from a cap and roster depth standpoint. So
permanent real estate.
Oh yeah, he's got permanent real estate in my mind. He made me go through those freaking 4 years, and I wanted him out after 1 year, and everyone's, oh, you're crazy. You got to give him time. Oh yeah, thanks for giving him time. That really worked out. But anyway, 2nd and 7 here after that play. Split run to the boundary here. I thought Gates did a pretty good job here. I wanted to get your take on that. I was curious also what Andrew Thomas's assignment was on this play in your mind.
Andrew Thomas, he's just blocking.
I'm sorry, not Andrew Thomas, John Feliciano.
John Feliciano is just climbing through because 64 is supposed to reach, which is really difficult, the nose, who's John Ridgway. I would have liked, just looking at this and not knowing exactly what the coaching points are, for Feliciano to chip to allow Glowinski to really get his shoulders and hips around the play side.
Sure.
Because 91 makes this tackle by flowing all the way over towards Saquon Barkley. And even if he wasn't there, Cam Curl's right there in his run fit to make this play as well. But Feliciano's just climbing to locate 52 if 52 decides to flow over. But as we saw earlier, he takes that H back just in case it's a play action slide. But Washington plays this obviously much better on this specific play, and there's no cutback lane.
3rd and 7 after that, you get a DB blitzing here, which was interesting. It's a cover 2 look from the start here. Here you have a sack for 2 yards. Giants don't like anything available to them, and this kind of takes off points off the board, right? I don't think there's much. I'm curious what you think. I don't think there's many options here for Daniel Jones here. Like, I think there's a case to be made. Maybe he can try to fit it into a tight window to Richie James, but I don't know, man. I don't really see any options here.
Nah, neither do I. The Richie James thing, you have 22 playing, leaning inside,
Yeah, that's a
kind
tough
of
throw.
baiting that. Like, look, he's splitting the deep safeties, but 22 has his eyes on it. And there's really no one to occupy 22. So
I like the decision, honestly. I think if you try to throw to any of those windows, it's going to be tip maybe, pick maybe. So it sucks that we got sacked here. This was a good call by Washington, and it worked. It's the only way
and
to describe it.
the post curl route by Isaiah Hodgins comes open here, and I appreciated the play call from that standpoint, but there's no way Jones can get him that football. He has two guys on his back. You
Not
can see
enough
it.
time, right? Yep.
No, it's not on Daniel Jones. It's just something that was schemed up, but the individual blocking just didn't really hold up against a exotic pressure look for Washington, who didn't necessarily blitz because they don't have to. So yeah, it just ends up getting beat around the edge. You can see Andrew Thomas ends up on the ground. I think this is the sack that's credited against Andrew Thomas. Look, you can judge it. Is this Andrew Thomas being terrible? No. Andrew Thomas has two guys against one. It might have been a miscommunication because Daniel Bellinger flares out to block the one blitzing defensive back because there's two coming from each side. Andrew Thomas is engaged with, I think that's Montez Sweat. It might be Smith Williams. But what would have had to happen was Thomas would have to realize his blitz and he would have to kick out. Gates would have had to kick out to take on Thomas's guy, but it's a little bit late. You see how it's a little bit late recognized. I don't know exactly who it is to blame in this situation, but you can see how Gates and Thomas are both. Gates isn't really blocking anybody at this point. Now Feliciano isn't because Jonathan Allen drops off the line of scrimmage. So it's just well schemed up blitz and pressure from Jack Del Rio, taking advantage of Mike Kafka in this protection package. And you can see Daniel Bellinger.
That was credited to Andrew Thomas. I like the fact that Pro Football Focus is credited this sack to Thomas, like, really makes me question anything when it comes to Pro Football Focus. I hate to say it, but it sucks.
I think it's just because Thomas, and I don't know whose fault this is. I think it's his responsibility to kick out and take that blitzer. And I might be speaking out of turn here. I'm not 100% certain. I'm just kind of doing this off of what it looks like or what it might appear to be, just because you have Nick Gates. See, it's difficult though, man, because there's a 4-eye. Nick Gates is going to have to realize this. And this is kind of like a Wink Martindale type pressure because these guys are going to drop off. So it's really just not even necessarily on Andrew Thomas. You're right. It's more so just great scheming by Washington. It's just if you had to credit somebody, because I think you have to in Pro Football Focus, it's going to go against Thomas instead of the chip and release guy of Daniel Bellinger. But I agree. It's kind of a stupid one.
Yeah. So it sets up the 10th drive, the final drive of regulation for the Giants. This one went 3 and out again with 0 yards. This was the one where they took three shots. The first one is the one you've probably seen already. This is the deep shot to Slayton that he dropped here. You'll see it from this end zone angle first. As you can see from the end zone angle, the ball does tail off to the left, which is what you want it to do in general. But obviously, Slayton, I think, makes a weird adjustment to this play and kind of tries to stop. Maybe he thinks it's coming in short. I don't know. Maybe he misjudges it, but isn't able to come down with a catch.
He's not able to come down with the catch, which sucks. And Jones does a really good job confirming this coverage and seeing that it's a blown coverage from Washington. As we'll see on the sideline angle, this is a blown cover 3 type of look where you have this 3 receiver 3-by-1 set, and Darius Slayton's the number 2. He's going to run that streak, and you're just basically going to have 2 in routes. And I know Brian Dable referred to this as a levels concept. Levels concept means you're going to have those 2 in breaking routes, and typically you have a deeper dig or a flag. You can have some sort of clear out element, but typically it's a deeper dig. But right here, it looks like Darius Slayton is just running the clear out, the vertical portion of this, and nobody drops to the deep third. There's 29 matches on the second dig route of Isaiah Hodgins, and then 20, who was the initial curl flat defender, doesn't replace him or do anything. He just kind of is looking for any crossing routes from the backside, which doesn't happen. So it's a blown coverage. It's an excellent opportunity. Middle of the field, closed safety ends up kind of bending with Richie James and is out of position. And this throw is a good, strong throw. And I feel like Darius Slayton, if he just ran underneath it instead of stopping right here and slowing down a little bit, this could have been a touchdown. I said, and I stand by it, if you want an ideal situation, maybe a little bit more outside with a little bit more air underneath it might have been the best. But this isn't on Daniel Jones, in my opinion. It's more of a bad adjustment from Darius Slayton. I think, though, Darius Slayton wasn't even aware that there wasn't a deep third defender.
Right.
I think Darius Slayton thought this was going to be another contested catch situation. So he stops and he thinks there's a cornerback like on his ass right now or close or closing in on him. So he has to basically create a shield from it, high point the ball over top of him and then fall. Maybe that's why Darius Slayton stopped his route and did this premature jumping thing. Maybe that's why. Not 100% certain, but that's probably a likely thought process from the receiver. And I'm not sure of what's built into the playbook, but I'm sure if Daniel Jones did put this out, or not even outside the numbers, you don't want Darius Slayton to flip his hips, just a little bit more towards the numbers with more air to allow Darius Slayton to run. Darius Slayton would have realized there must not be somebody to this deep third. Like there's a reason why Daniel Jones is throwing this ball. Like I'm sure they have a rapport to know that much, right? So it doesn't have to be completely outside the numbers. Like when I put something on Twitter, people were like, kind of like, yeah, like you want him to throw it to the sideline. No, you don't want him to throw it to the sideline. But if you do angle a little bit towards the numbers, Darius Slayton can just angle his stem. You don't throw it necessarily towards the 40-yard line. You maybe put it towards that 35 or maybe a little bit deeper if Jones can muster that arm strength, which I'm sure he could. But again, this is under pressure. This wasn't on Daniel Jones. We're talking about ideal circumstances when Dan and I are referencing maybe that the ball wasn't placed perfectly, but I still think it's primarily on Darius Slayton. You have to come down with that and maybe have a better awareness if he did think there was a cornerback on his ass, which again, I'm not 100% certain of that. It's a little bit of conjecture.
Yeah, I think you broke that down perfectly, Nick. I think this was a good example of something that you, like I said at the top of the show, you see better on the all 22 angle than you see real life broadcast in real time. Yes, I think it's possible to lead the receiver a little ahead of him, a little closer to the numbers, but overall, this one's on the receiver.
Yeah, and that brings up a 2nd and 10 where the Giants go right back to the well.
Yeah,
look, the Giants, they're a more conservative offense because of all the many variables that are somewhat questionable about this offense. But I do appreciate the fact that they're trying to take another one-on-one matchup with Slayton. And this is confirmed post-snap because what does it look like pre-snap, Dan? Looks like quarters, right? And what happens? Cameron Curl drops. He buzzes down to the strong side. So there's strong safety rotation from a quarters look pre-snap to a cover 3 look, which is going to be confirmed by Jones, which says to him, I have a one-on-one matchup outside with Darius Slayton. Let's take that shot again. And this time Slayton kind of gets rode off the red line towards the sideline, squeezed towards the sideline, little bit of contact. I don't think it's egregious that it wasn't called personally. If it was called, I'd be like, yeah, there's a little contact there. I get it. But I do feel like 36 has his head whipped around and is in really good position on Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton, unlike what he was able to do when he made the 55-yard catch, he just can't kind of swim around and position himself in a more advantageous manner. So this ball just kind of lands in a good position, but Slayton is just out of bounds. I also think if 36 doesn't get his head around, this might be PI. But the fact that he got his head around is a big sticking point, I think, in terms of when flags come out.
Yeah, now running it back from the end zone angle. This was the throw I referenced earlier. This is my favorite throw of the game. Well, the one he meant in overtime was maybe even better, but this is one of my favorite throws in the game. If you just look at the trajectory of this football from the launch point and where it actually lands, that lands in a really good spot in general, right? Right near the sideline. Now, it's not caught. It's not a touch. It's not a catch, whatever. The receiver doesn't get his hands on it. That's not on Jones. That's where the ball is supposed to be. The receiver has to win, and it's not all on the receiver because it's a great play by the defensive back. But this is an example of I wish Slayton did a better job adjusting to this pass or just doing a better job of kind of fighting back into it instead of being ridden out of bounds. Because if he just like fights back, there's even a chance that he can position himself in a different way to draw a defensive pass interference. We both agree this should have not been pass interference on the defense, but if he had done a little bit of a different type of thing at the top of this route adjustment wise, he could have made it look more like a defensive pass interference or even just position himself in a way that it actually is a defensive pass interference.
Yeah, and it sucks that that didn't necessarily happen. You're giving your guy a one-on-one shot. You have to go up and make a play, and Slayton wasn't able to on this one or the last play. But this is an uber aggressive approach at this part of the field. There's only a minute 45 left. So you're telling me this is a 2-minute drill. You had some time and you took 2 deep shots and it wasn't converted. And that sets up a 3rd and 10, which was almost intercepted. A good pocket. Daniel Jones tries to squeeze it on the dig route to Isaiah Hodgins, and Washington just play it really, really well.
Yeah, this was a great pocket. Really good opportunity on a 3rd and 10. If you had more available to you, this was not the best throw to make, in my opinion. Just because it's into triple coverage, and it was actually almost intercepted. You can't see it as well from that angle, but the trailing guy had his hands on it. If you look from the sideline angle, let's see if there was any other options here that might have been potential, way for Jones to go instead of throwing this ball into that kind of coverage, especially given the pocket. Let's see if we see anything we like. Not too much, right? I mean, you could potentially take that whole shot at the bottom of the screen if you're watching on YouTube, but this is not like the whole shot from earlier to Slayton that had so much space in my mind, because you can even see, look at that D-back at the bottom of the screen. Look at his eyes, right? He's in a position where he's looking at the quarterback and he's almost squatting on it. So I think if you try to make that throw, it might even be intercepted potentially. So I actually don't hate the decision. I just think there's really nothing really available to him.
Yeah, it's a quarters coverage again, and that throw to James would have been to the boundary. Now, you could say that 29 is getting flooded here to the deep fourth. I mean, to the field side, because you have Richie James kind of running that out route with Darius Slayton running the streak. That's a lot of ground to cover. But what I do like about this play call to the field side, which the Giants don't typically throw a lot of passes to the field sides, specifically hole shots, which, as you've pointed out several times, the Giants don't really do much of anyways, is Daniel Bellinger releases into the flat, which is going to occupy that curl flat defender, which is going to open up space for Richie James. But at this point, it's long developing. Daniel Jones already made his mind up to throw this dig route because you have that cornerback who is in an outside shade. The safety is still gaining depth. Daniel Jones confirms all that, and he thinks that Isaiah Hodgins can probably win inside, but the cornerback makes a really good play on the football, and the safety also is patient, waiting on the dig route, and you can see how it all just kind of converges and is almost intercepted.
Yeah, would have been a devastating interception. I might have lost the game if they got picked there, but thankfully it hit his hands and dropped this D-back's hands and dropped to the ground. End of regulation there. We get an 11th drive, which is a 4-play, 9-yard drive for the Giants offense. Their first drive overtime, not their best drive here. And you'll see it starts with a quarters look. They run play action out of it. And this is a successful play here because you're taking advantage of the leverage from the defense here with this comeback to or this little nice route by Darius Slayton. And it's an 11-yard gain.
Yeah, you start to see the Giants kind of actually developing some sort of passing attack in overtime by just attacking the off leverage. You want to run quarters on us? Cool. We're going to run these deep curls, these short curls, these slants, slant flat, which the Giants ran a lot. And you can see even here, you have that deep curl, eat into the leverage, and then curl, time it up, throw it to the outside shoulder away from the curl flat defender. Also have this tight end, Nick Vannett, chip and release underneath just to hold Jamin Davis from gaining depth. Quick pitch and catch from Daniel Jones, Darius Slayton to move the football. And that's a really good gain. It's one of the best gains they've had in quite some time at this point.
Yeah, it was a long half of nothing. And I like how you just saw it there, but I like how Darius Slayton kind of throttled down at the top of that stem and just broke back. It looked very smooth and the transition was nice. It then sets up this 3-yard loss here in the run game. Right, they go right back to the run game. This is a bad rep for Nick Gates, our boy. Like you've mentioned in the past, Nick, he does struggle against this Washington defensive line. It's a really good defensive front. But this is not a rep. This is a rep he would certainly want back.
Absolutely. Jonathan Allen gets right into his chest and then creates immediate penetration on a halfback pitch to the field side, the double Y side. You have all those blockers over there. And if this is blocked up well from Gates' standpoint, the Giants might have been able to do something. It's just Nick Vannett also loses to 97. But Andrew Thomas, again, man, like the lack of, I don't know if it's just continuity or just like one blocker not getting used or maximized to the play side is another thing that's been plaguing this Giants offense. Like, look at Andrew Thomas here. He doesn't block really anybody. It's not on Andrew Thomas. Some of it's what Washington is doing. Some of it is poor execution by other teammates on the Giants. But he doesn't really block anybody. And you have these Washington defenders just kind of rallying. But the main culprit here is Jonathan Allen just breaking into the backfield and then tackling Saquon Barkley.
Sets up a 2nd and 13. Tough spot to put your offense in after, running the ball on 1st and 10. At least they don't go back to the run. They do a play action play here. Jones doesn't like what he sees and does a good job here of just taking the gap and running for an 8-yard gain.
And watch Nick Gates. Nick Gates finishes his block with authority on a little twist up front. It's a 8-yard scramble by Daniel Jones. Let's see if there's anything downfield that materializes in this 12 personnel set. Motion to a more reduced split from Darius Slayton. If you look downfield, it's a Tampa 2 look. And the Giants have a nice Tampa 2 beater. But Jones sees the depth of the coverage and just decides to use his legs. But if you watch Darius Slayton and if you watch Daniel Bellinger crossing over the middle of the formation, they both sit. This is somewhat of a choice. They both sit right in the void between the middle linebacker, splitting the middle linebacker and those safeties. But at this point, Daniel Jones already made the decision to use his legs. And you can see how Cam Curl kind of abandons where he was in zone, comes down and makes this tackle. But if Jones was maybe a little bit more patient in the pocket, like I'm not faulting him for running necessarily, but if he is a little bit more patient in the pocket, he might have had one of those two open. It's a little bit difficult because those middle hook defenders probably wouldn't have pinched up as far as they did because Jones did cheat towards the line of scrimmage. But from a play call standpoint, there might have been some voids there because the linebackers or those just second level defenders had Saquon Barkley and another tight end in the flat to kind of occupy their eyes.
Yeah, it's like a middle of the field hole shot there, opportunity. But he decides to run with it, gets 8, sets up a 3rd and 5. Once again, more of like a Tampa 2 cover, Tampa 2 robber look, which has been giving the Giants trouble in this game. You'll see it from the end zone angle, but this is a really bad rep here from Mark Lewinsky. Kind of screws up the entire play.
Yeah, Washington gets pressure, sack on 3rd and 5, end the drive. Giants have to punt the football.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
If you look at Isaiah Hodgins,
that's what I was just going to say. Look at Hodgins' body language after the play. He really thought that he should have got the ball.
And it's to the field side, like we said. Jones doesn't throw there as often, but it's difficult for Jones. I mean, right here, I would imagine you read the coverage, you have that safety. If you throw it towards the sideline, yeah, you might be able to hit Isaiah Hodgins, but the pressure just ends up getting
to be like a back shoulder ball.
It would, because the Giants are in a 3-by-1 set, right? And you have who's that? Darius Slayton running that deep post, which kind of occupies the safety's eyes just for a little bit. He doesn't know if he's going to run a 7. But look at Isaiah Hodgins just on the bottom of the numbers.
A lot of space.
Fade towards the sideline. Nothing but space. And the defenses do this to quarterbacks that they don't respect sometimes, right? That if it's to the field side, they'll cheat their defenders to the inside a little bit more because they don't necessarily trust the quarterback to make those types of throws. The thing about Daniel Jones is he has the arm talent too. And I would like him to pull the trigger in situations like this, not maybe this specific play, because as we can see from the end zone angle, the defenders are all over him. And that also may be another reason why they don't think Daniel Jones will make that throw. But there have been times throughout the season where you can see a similar type of situation to the field side, far throw, a difficult throw, and it's not executed. And it doesn't look like it would have been undercut despite, you know what I mean? It's not like there was a defender who would be able to make a play on the football because it's further to throw from the far hash than the near hash. But right here, Glowinski just gets bitched right back into Daniel Jones's lap, and there's really not much the quarterback can do.
Maybe your first curse in Big Blue Banter history. I don't know if bitch is even considered a curse anymore.
They say that stuff on the radio, and I've cursed several times.
But yeah, I mean, that's just another hole shot we don't take. It is a thing. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. We don't throw hole shots in this offense. For whatever reason, it's not thrown a lot. And I thought that was an interesting point you brought up about how defenses play certain quarterbacks. Like, I don't think they're scared at all of him throwing this hole shot. You could just see, look at the amount of space that they offer that outside receiver, Isaiah Hodgins. And that's why Hodgins kind of puts his ball up and then a hand up. And then you can see after the sack, Hodgins kind of gets a little frustrated. The ball didn't come his way.
Yeah, because it's Tampa 2, you don't really have a traditional flat defender. Like number 20, he fades towards the numbers, but he's waiting for Richie James to flow in his direction because the cornerback, who is in off coverage anyways, he bails to a deep half. So there's just so much space for Isaiah Hodgins on that back shoulder type play. Like, look, you can't even see, if you're watching this on YouTube, the sidelines, but look how far that's how much space there is. And like that would have been a nice play. What could have set up a field goal, but it's just the protection broke down and the throw wasn't made.
Yep. So we're sacked. We punt. Giants get the ball back after that because Washington also can't get anything going on offense. And it's their 12th drive. It's a 7-play, 36-yard drive with a punt. This is a tough drive here because it's just like they move the ball, and at the very end, you see the drive break down when two guys run into each other on a 3rd and 2, like in the backfield. It's just like, how does that happen on such a key play? It's very, very frustrating. You see them start out here with a little throw to the flat against Barkley. You see a little curl flat concept,
which you're going to see a lot on this drive. Just simple curl flat. You can see here, 36. He doesn't really fade with Saquon Barkley. He stays on the numbers. You have two guys on Isaiah Hodgins. Good, quick, decisive read by Daniel Jones to realize that and just take what the defense is giving him, throwing the ball to Saquon Barkley for a good 7-yard gain against cover 2 defense to set up a 2nd and 2 or 2nd and 3.
And we'll see it here, right? Because I want to, before we get into this, we're about to see another curl flat and then a slant flat combo back to back, both for good gains. Though this might be a run play before it. But my point is eventually we're going to get to that on this drive. So Here's my question for you, Nick. This is where I start to understand some of the criticism from Mike Kafka in this game. We get to a point in overtime where we're finding a lot of success running very simple pass concepts, curl flat, slant flat, and we're doing it from the shotgun. And we're doing it from lighter personnel groupings, though some of them actually were like 12, but lighter personnel group, not the 13, the 3 tight ends on the field, not the extra offensive lineman on the field look from a personnel standpoint. I think he probably should have gone to this at some point during his like series of 3 and outs and 4 and outs in the second half, because the quick game passing game is something Daniel Jones can execute on. Every one of these play calls you're watching now, the slant flat here, the ball is out fast. It's delivered on time. The ball placement is pretty good, pretty damn good. The velocity is pretty damn good. Jones can operate the quick passing game out of the gun, and Washington played a lot of too high in this game. So I just think that this is where I criticized Kafka in this game. I criticize him for not going to the gun earlier, not getting out of his comfort zone. His comfort zone right now is under center, heavy personnel, run the play action slide, run the play action boot, run the ball, whatever. But we can also be this quick hitting passing offense sometimes that'll run some shotgun, that'll run some no huddle. And these are not like, we're not asking Jones to execute, or not even Jones. Let's just call it the whole passing offense, because it's not Jones's fault. And I'm not trying to say that. I'm saying I don't even think it's mostly his fault. I think it's mostly the offensive line's fault that we don't have a pass game, and the receiver's fault. But the point is that I'm trying to make, we're not asking the pass offense to operate anything that crazy here. We're talking about slant flat combinations and curl flat combinations, half field reads that are designed to create some kind of void and opening, and usually do, for the quick passing game. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, will Kafka look back on this and even himself be like, damn, maybe I should have gone to this type of offense a little earlier?
I really hope so.
Yeah.
Because this is simple. This is just shotgun. You have a bunch with 12 personnel, H back, and what was that, Nick the net in a 2-point stance. You just send Daniel Bellinger to the flat, run a spot route, and then another curl route. But you don't even throw it to that side. To the other side, the 2 receiver side, with Saquon Barkley just releases into the flat. Isaiah Hodgins runs a quick slant against quarters coverage, off leverage. You have space. You read Jamin Davis. What does Jamin Davis do? Jamin Davis matches Saquon Barkley to the flat, and then he removes himself from the open throwing window. It's a simple, easy read for Daniel Jones. And I think Mike Kafka should be criticized, but I just think some people are taking it way too far with fire the guy and things like that. No, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Fire the guy who's brought better route combinations to this offense than they've had in 2 straight years, who's had designed free touchdowns for them earlier in the season, who's maximized, in my mind, or found a way to get the best out of Daniel Jones. Now, don't fire a guy for struggling a bit, but obviously at some point you got to hope that he makes adjustments like this, because he's got to trust his quick passing game a little more. He's got to trust his light personnel groupings a little more. It's just not like, we're not a team right now that's operating that well out of these 13 and 12 personnel and 6 offensive lineman looks. We're not blocking that well in the run game. They're taking away the PA slide. They're taking away the what we want to do from those formations in a pass game sense. So let him run a little shotgun quick game pass game. Look at what's happening here. We're getting gains, right? We just had we took the ball from like inside the 12 or whatever it was, inside the 15, and we're already at midfield here from just quick hitting shotgun pass game. So I want to see more of that, especially for facing 2 eye looks.
And taking what the defense gives you. Because look how far back you have 2 safeties that are high. Both of those cornerbacks are off leverage. You just align 3 receivers to one side and then just send Daniel Bellinger right down the line of scrimmage, get the football to your talented young tight end in space and have him pick up a couple yards. And that's exactly what happens here. Like you said, man, they're just matriculating the ball down the field, and they're doing it from a way that, in a manner that they have not really done much this season. So hopefully this is a learning point for the Giants, and they do a little bit more of this against Philadelphia, albeit hopefully the offensive line can hold up even against quick game, because they got some guys who can get after the passer.
Yeah, but against quick game, I think they can. Like, it's a quick game. So I don't know. We'll see what happens here. But obviously you're seeing the play here go out to Barkley. Again, just a little quick game concept. Good ball placement, I thought, on this one. It gave him a chance.
Excellent ball placement, but you can see how Washington, they make an adjustment, right? Because watch how that cornerback now is in the flat. Now you're just in a cover 2. You're not in a cover 4. So you're up closer towards the line of scrimmage as a cornerback. And watch how the cornerback gets to Isaiah Hodgins' hip, puts his eyes on Daniel Jones, sees what Daniel Jones is doing, and then just goes right after Saquon Barkley to mitigate that gain. So you can see the adjustment right here from Washington, who have seen a couple slant flats on this drive.
And then here's the play that bogs down the drive, the 3rd and 2, where you'll see Richie James and Barkley run into themselves.
Just terrible.
And look at what it takes
That's
away. Those like there was if this play is run successfully, there's an opportunity for him to hit either of those over routes.
possibly the over routes. But what I'm imagining this play is that Saquon Barkley is going to go into the mesh point with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is stepping like that's the case. And Richie James, for whatever reason, does the same thing. Like, in my opinion, I think Richie James is supposed to step up and then slide down into the flat. Daniel Jones either gives the football off to Saquon Barkley because he's reading someone on the Washington defense, or he can keep it and then have Richie James as a quick little check down to pick up 2 yards. Because watch, Daniel Jones is reading 52, it looks like. He's reading Jamin Davis. He's reading 95, that side of the line of scrimmage. But then he's just like, oh, crap, man, what the hell happened there? And then he just gets tackled and the Giants are forced to punt. Like, this was kind of the cherry on top of the absolute disappointment that the New York Giants showed throughout the second half of this game and into overtime, because as many mistakes as they made, it was here where we're like, if they can convert, they'll probably win this football game. And not only did they not convert, Dan, they freaking ran into each other and had a huge miscommunication in one of the biggest moments of the season.
Yep, unfortunately, but they do punt after that 4th and 3, which was a controversial call at the time. It works out for Brian Daboll this time because they get the ball back, but there is not much time left after they got the ball back, and that does ultimately end up being the reason they don't score, in my mind, because they were moving the ball pretty well in overtime once they decided to actually, go into the gun and throw the ball with some simple, quick-hitting concepts. But first play here is my favorite throw of the game from Daniel Jones here. Just a simple over route. But if you look at the things I like about this play, the first thing that I like the most, as I brought up countless times on this podcast, is pocket manipulations. His slide to reset the pocket and give him a better pass lane is excellent. And then it's a really big boy throw there into a tight window. This is the definition of a tight window throw. That safety's driving down. He has to fit that ball into basically no window. It's almost like, and he does it. He fits it in for a 14-yard gain.
It's a great pass by Daniel Jones, an underrated. That's in the hands of Cam Curl, and Richie James is able to come away with it somehow. And now you have the ball on the opposite side of the field now.
Yes.
And now you get it across midfield. You have a kicker with a huge leg, but he set up the 2nd and 10. It's just going to be a quick spike by the New York Giants to set up the 3rd and 7.
Yeah, and we'll just run this through as we go through, because now you'll just see they throw it away in the 3rd and 7. They miss the kick from 57. So we'll run that through as we go into our superlatives now, Nick. So let's do some superlatives for this game. Start with the unheralded player on film for you.
Unheralded player on film, I guess I'm going to go with Isaiah Hodgins. Let's go that way. And he caught a touchdown, so he's pretty heralded, right? But I think just from a guy you got on the practice squad, knew Brian Daboll's offense, that's all well and good, and that's fun. But he's being a big contributor right now, and he's starting to be that number 2 option next to Darius Slayton. So I'm going to go with Haji.
It's definitely Hodgins for me. He had the touchdown catch. He had the huge 3rd down conversion on a throw 5 yards short of the sticks that should never be converted. He was open multiple times in my mind that the ball didn't come to him, at least 3 times that I can remember. 2 overs and that one field shot, that one hole shot that wasn't taken. He's tough. He's physical. His touchdown route was among the best routes I've seen all year. And that gets me to my next one. Best route you saw on film.
Yeah, it's the whip.
Yep.
Yeah, if you want to call it a whip, pivot, whatever you want to call it. It's the touchdown pass to Hodgins.
Sure. How about the best throw you saw on film from Daniel Jones?
I think I'm going to go with one of those Darius Slayton ones, probably the one that's slightly to the inside. There was a lot of velo on those balls, right? And I think there could be an argument, even though we've critiqued the pass, but there could be an argument that the throw to Darius Slayton that went incomplete that he did not catch might be that because Darius Slayton played it poorly, even though it wasn't an ideal throw. But with pressure in his face,
it's a good throw, right?
And the recognition of, hey, that's a blown coverage. I need to take this shot. I'm not going to throw the levels. I'm going to throw that clear out. I think maybe you can go in that direction as well.
That's fair. I will actually go with the throw after that one, the 2nd and 10 that was toward the sideline. I just love where that ball landed. I love the location of that ball placement there. That is tight to the side. Like that's outside the right. If it was a better route, or let's say it was a 1 route. I can't say it's a bad route. I think the corner played it well. But if the receiver had won that route, that's hitting him right over his outside shoulder in stride. Like that is a sick ball. And I didn't. So I'm going with that one. How about the best player overall on film from you?
Best player overall. See if I'm forgetting somebody, but it's not going to be Saquon.
No,
I think it's going to be Daniel. I think it's going to be Daniel Jones.
It's a tough one for me between Andrew Thomas and Daniel Jones. Like I said earlier, I thought this game was much better on tape for Jones than I thought on the broadcast angle, and his best game on film since that Jaguars game. So slight back and forth. I'll go with Daniel Jones, though. I think it's like the LeBron James MVP thing. Like you could give this to Andrew Thomas every
Yeah.
year. And the same thing goes for Mahomes in my mind, but you can give it to Mahomes every year. But we'll give it to Jones. I think, I don't really think Thomas had too many bad reps, but Jones had a lot of big throws, a lot of big runs in this game. And so, and especially when you go back on the tape and you see that throw to Slayton that he dropped, it wasn't really a bad throw at all. It was a pretty damn good throw. It wasn't the perfect throw, but it was a pretty good throw. So yeah, I'll give it to Jones as well. Okay. Wrap it up with a pass blocking grade 1 through 10, and then a run blocking grade. Start with the pass blocking grade 1 through 10.
I think it's really interesting, right? Because there were some good pockets in this game,
Yeah.
but then there were some Mark Lewinsky reps that were horrendous. But Evan Neal played well. Andrew Thomas, of course, he played well. Nick Gates was solid. John Feliciano was solid. So despite the fact that Daniel Jones was sacked several times, I think I'm going to go with a 6.1. I think is a solid one.
Going 6.6. I think it was a little bit. I think you broke it down well. If you just take out the Glowinski reps, it wasn't that bad, and there were some really good pockets at times. So pass blocking to me wasn't a big issue in this game at all. I still think, look, there's so few pass sets. I still think the overall offensive line play, interior offensive line play, and like kind of how they feel about it does impact what they want to do. So it's not like this is not me saying they're fine on the offensive line, but just in this game, there weren't too many examples outside of Glowinski, who was just absolutely terrible in pass pro and just overall in this game, but especially pass pro. Run blocking grade 1 through 10.
Run blocking grade. Let's go with,
that's tough.
1.8. No, you know what? Let's go with 2.7 because that was a really nice run blocking play for the touchdown. But it's these same issues, man. That like with Evan Neal, he has the same issues that he had prior to the injury. Hopefully, he can grow out of that and play a little bit more balanced. And in terms of just the continuity on the offensive line, it does seem like they're just not on the same page. I kind of think it goes beyond just the rotation that definitely plays into it. But I think what the defense is doing with their movement and their stunting and their exchanging gaps and just their overall power, I don't think we really have strong interior offensive linemen. I think Nick Gates is probably your strongest. Feliciano, he's okay. And then Glowinski is definitely an issue. So I'm going to go with a 2.7.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a 1.4. Really, that rep and that touchdown rep to Barkley was the only one I think that was blocked that well. Like you can look at like the draw plays, but that was more just like a good play, like just a light box, good play call. So then it's like one good play. A lot of their big plays were just Daniel Jones scramble runs, so undesigned. So, and even on the design run, like that, we showed some of the great cutbacks Jones made, and so it's like that's not blocking. So, like a really low grade for me. This is the run blocking has really unfortunately denigrated throughout the season, and we're at a bad spot there. I think we'll see what happens, but that's part of the reason why I want Kafka to mix in a lot more of the shotgun, a lot more of the quick passing game. It's time. We're officially at that point. Like I was okay running that style or the style offense we've been trying to run all year. Earlier in the season when we were executing better in the run game. Now that we're executing so poorly in the run game, it's time to try something different in my mind. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see if that's the case moving forward. But thanks again for tuning into the Big Blue Banter podcast. Keep it locked and loaded. You got a defensive film podcast breakdown coming. We're going to do a preview of the game, all the usual stuff. And we haven't done a mailbag in a while, so we'll work one of those in later this week too. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and go Giants.